Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 2 of Game Day. We are Kitbasch3d, and we're coming straight at you live from Los Angeles, California. That's part of the Lightbox expo. What's up, Max?
How's it going?
It's going good. I'm still figuring out these headphone things, but it's just because I don't know how to wear headphones. But other than that, things are going great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for today.
I am excited for today too. I want to throw huge shout outs to the chat yesterday. Y'all have been absolutely amazing. So many of you guys stuck with us all day long, which is incredible. We got tons of messages from our producers and our partners at Twitch and Procreate and Lightbox talking about how positive the chat was yesterday, which I think is such a cool thing that we are so fortunate to be part of. And for a lot of the Twitch community, that may not necessarily be the norm, or really just the internet in general. But I think what's so cool is this community here with you all. We're really positive with each other, and it's been so cool. I know so many of the guests on the show have really appreciated y'all's excitement. So please bring that more today. If you're out there in the chat, say what up.
Yeah, and throw your questions in there. You know, we're going to be grabbing them as we go. That's really one of the big points of this whole thing of why we're doing this as a live stream, is to connect you to these legendary artists and make sure that we shine a spotlight on them, but also be able to answer your questions and connect you to them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is a big reason why we do this show live, is because we can connect with you all. You know, it causes some complications with some hiccups and technology stuff and streaming over the internet in multiple different countries often, but the plus side of that is that we get to connect with you guys live. So please bring your energy today. Jokey in the house, what up, buddy? Hervis, thanks for showing up again today. Glenn Bunn, how you doing? Hollows Woodsman's in the house. Guys, come on. This is amazing.
No. Sure, I'll do it.
Okay.
It's my pleasure and our pleasure.
It's our pleasure, but it's his pleasure.
Our pleasure to introduce our first guests. I'm very excited to have both of these incredible artists on this show. Incredible artists, incredible people, and incredible inspiration. We have Jan Yershel and Emmanuel Shu.
Sup, dudes? How y'all doing?
Hello.
Hi, hey.
Hi, the Singapore from the other. It's quite dark here, sorry. Yeah.
Well, it's quite dark there because it's darn near the middle of the night, right? You're in Singapore.
Yep, it's midnight. Yep.
Well, Jan, thank you for staying up all night here on a Saturday night to hang out with us. This is
For you always.
such a and E-Man, you're up in SF, yeah?
Yeah, and SF. So I just woke up not too long ago. For me.
So cool, and you guys are partners now on a new project, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But managing the time difference it must always be like this. Whenever you guys are talking, Jan's going to bed and E-Man's waking up, right?
No, we've come up with a pretty good time schedule where I think it's his morning and my evening night that works out pretty well, right, Jan?
Yeah, exactly, and I'm used to it, right? Because all my clients are either in LA, San Francisco, or whatever. So he's just another one of my clients, so to speak, right?
Is that how it is?
Speaking of clients,
I just don't get paid. Or pro bono.
Speaking of clients, in case people out there, I don't know if you're in this industry, how you wouldn't know both of their work, but you guys have quite the impressive resume.
Yeah, I wanted to read off some of this. So just a quick glance at IMDb. Jan's work on Star Citizen, X-Men, Captain Marvel, King Arthur, Ghost in the Shell, Halo, Rogue One, Call of Duty, Terminator, Assassin's Creed, Borderlands, the list goes on. E-Man, these are new ones coming up. Masters of the Universe, the new Thor, Matrix 4, Star Citizen, Bloodshot, Underwater, Charlie's Angels, Maleficent, Godzilla, Pokemon, The Predator, Blade Runner, The Last Thor, The Dark Tower, Triple X, Deadpool. Guys, that's in the last 4 years. Is there any project you haven't worked on?
Yeah, there are some. I missed some slip through the cracks.
That is a very judicious answer, Ian. Thank you for that. What is, when you think about, like, you two are two of the most celebrated concept artists out there. You're in the echelon of hey, if there's a phone call going on for a special effects movie or video game, I'm sure you guys get it. Can you help some of the audience members who might be new to this industry, might be checking this out for the first time? What, in your words, is a concept artist?
Want to take that, Jan?
I want to take that. I don't even know what I'm doing half of the time.
Which is also very good and important for people to hear.
Exactly, right? So concept designer, what do we do? I think if you talk about what we're mostly working on movies, right? It's really about helping directors or helping screenwriters visualize. Basically, they have a couple of words, and we help them visualize what the movie could potentially look like. We help them pitching ideas to a studio, and we also help throughout pre-production really get the producers a better idea of what this will really look like, right? Before they want to fork out $150 million for something to shoot and build, it makes more sense to get a couple of guys in a room, or I don't know, these days all over the world, in a virtual room to kind of plan out and see what could work, what couldn't work. So that's where we come in.
I'm curious, after working on that many blockbusters, do you still get excited for a big title movie, or what is it that gets you excited about a project? What are you looking for?
Everybody tries to tell you that they're working on the most groundbreaking new thing that nobody has ever seen before, but yeah, I throw that over to you.
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, I still get excited every project, to be honest with you. Now, there are some projects that are more exciting than others, but in general, I like what I do, so I get excited. Unless it's a title or unless I'm really burned out at that point. Most of the time, I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. We got a question in the chat, but I'm going to rephrase it for Aaron DLGS. He or she asks, how does one get to that level, and what schools have you gone to? But I think I want to rephrase that and say, what do you attribute to being at that level of your career of working on these big titles? Do you think it was education in school? Do you think it was something from within? Or how would you attribute this level of success?
Stubbornness.
Stubbornness, yes.
Stubbornness.
Stubbornness
I
to
would
not wanting
say,
to give up. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, persistence for sure. Schooling, of course, it's mattered, and we've talked about it, and even just in the last thing that we talked about, it's uh, a lot of hard work, really. But it's just hard work that I think anybody with a focused attention can get. It's just a matter of time and hard work, and uh, sure, schooling helps cut down that time because somebody's helping you sort of hone you into what exactly you need to do to get to that level. But I think it's one of those things. Just for me, it's always going to be hard work.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Woodsman in the chat goes, impressive is an understatement. These two basically built the worlds I've been living in since I was a young adult. All of us as well. Well, let's talk about this new project you guys are on. So, two enormous titans of the concept art world, you guys have teamed up to make your own podcast, the Art Department Podcast. What was the inspiration behind starting this?
It's a good question. I mean, I wanted to do a podcast for a long time, and I didn't really quite know how to put it together, or really what my focus was going to be. And then we've been friends for a long time and worked on a lot of projects together. And I think at some point I heard him talk about it on a different podcast where he was a guest, and he said like, "Oh, I think I want to do a podcast," and I'm like, "Dude, how do I not know about this?" And then I think a few weeks later we released the first episode. So that's kind of the short version of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had always wanted to do that. I mean, you know about that, Banks. I mean, I've always wanted to give back a little bit more and to also talk about some things that aren't usually talked about. I mean, it's very easy to talk about demos and how-tos and things that seem immediate. Like how I actually do a certain thing. But I really wanted, and we in the end really wanted to do something that could sort of pull back the curtains and show you what actually happens in the industry, more like things like how to interview, topics that could help you understand the reasons behind how you do something, diversity, talent, all these are topics that we talk about. And at first they don't seem like topics that you normally like most people would, yeah, let's talk about how to do this, lens flare, put this cool image in and do that, and okay, that's the image, and here's me painting and demoing and talking about my career. Most of the time, we want to tell you, demystify all this industry talk, like, okay, well, what salary, what can you expect, things that people don't actually really want to talk about because sometimes they might be a little dry, sometimes it might be a sensitive information, and we'll throw it out there and see what people have to think. But I want you to see what's really happening in the industry, and not just this glorified, you get to paint cool images every day. There's so much that goes with interviewing and getting into the industry, staying in the industry, how to treat your fellow colleagues with respect, all this stuff. So, we're just trying to come up with topics like that and give you another glimpse of what it's like to be in the industry. So
I think one of my favorite things about this podcast is how brutally honest it is. There's a couple podcasts out there, and a lot of the times it's like, okay, how do we make this look shiny and appealing? And there is, there's a time and a place for that. What I love is that you guys bring a different perspective to it. And you're really saying things like, I remember even in the first episode, this question of, can anyone do it? And both of you being like, well, not really. Like, yes, you can, but if if you're at a different place in your life and you don't have that many hours or that much energy to put towards this with extreme focus and diligence, then like maybe you shouldn't try and do this. how do you feel about putting information out there like that's controversial? Have you gotten responses from people arguing with the things you're saying?
We have gotten only very little so far. I think so far everybody's kind of really really responding really well to it and embracing kind of the information we put out. I mean, we always try to come from an angle that this is our experience, this is our opinion. Please don't take this as the law of the land, right? So please look for more sources and build your own opinion, right? And but yeah, we had a couple of people kind of. I think it was the fan art episode. We talked a little bit about fan art, and we came from a perspective of we are very client-facing artists. We make most of our income through client work, and we really are, both of us, very pragmatic, I think, concept designers. And we focus on employability for most of the people who listen to our podcast. And of course, there are some people who have gotten lucky making a living through fan art. And they have kind of, well, very easy to take things out of context and kind of twist it, right? So it has resulted in some funny responses and reactions on the various social media networks, but it's fine. It's all cool. We always love to have a really nice conversation with people, and so far it's been really working well, I think.
I love that. You know, It's So Lit on the chat says that blunt and honest is a breath of fresh air. Actually, it was Yen SL, but It's So Lit, by the way. What's up? You guys give us some tidbits. I know we people after the show go and for sure break all the way into it, but give us a little bit of it. What are some tips you have on how to get hired?
You have a lot of tips.
I know. Well, just give
the
give
biggest
us,
tip I have is to go look at that episode because the truth of it is we really break it down. How to interview, how to get your work out there. How to get your stuff on social media. All these things we're talking about. So I think that's one of the things we actually cover quite in depth, right, Jan? I mean, we definitely have covered that.
I mean, there's a lot of things, right? I mean, we've talked about and really how to put your portfolio together, tips and tricks. I mean, actually not tricks, but just really honest advice, right? Not any kind of shortcuts, because those never last long. I think we've been talking about like what else is important. How can you become a better person, not only a better artist, right? What should you focus on in interviews, and how to behave, and also I think we talked about are you too old for this? I think our most popular episode is talking about age, right? Like and it was the response was amazing from a lot of people who are in similar positions that are drawn to this industry purely by passion, right? And what should they do about this passion, and how can they go about it? And I think that was really, really cool to see.
Yeah, and I think for me, what you said really rang true, and this is a big part of our podcast, is talking about the person behind the artist, and not so much just about the art or the artist. It's about the person behind, and maybe even how to be as a person and build. That to I think to us means a lot if we can convey that.
I think that's one of the things that Banks and I and Kitbasch are so focused on as well. Is it's one thing to do great work, but how do you live an extraordinary life? Because the great work is a vehicle to have the life that you want. And a lot of people, I think, look at it in reverse of like, oh, I want to have the life that allows me to make great work. I'm curious, while we have both of you, what does success look like for you? What do you think success is for yourself or for an artist?
Personally, I think for me, success is happiness to me. And if I can be happy today, I think I've succeeded. I know that it may mean how do you succeed in the industry or any amount of things, but like for us, it's especially for me, I think it's about me as a person today. If I'm happy, that's, I've succeeded. And it could mean anything. It's different for everybody. But if I wake up feeling that, I'm good, whether I'm working or not, or working on the perfect project or not. So I don't know about you, Jan. What do you think?
I think for me, it's because I struggle a lot with, I think, how to express my creativity. And especially being a commercial artist, I mean, you basically have to do what other people tell you to do, just like in any other job. So for me, I think the biggest goal and biggest success is freedom. And I mean, that means to a certain extent financial freedom, right? I want to be able to work on whatever I want, whenever I want. And you have to find certain compromises, but that is the absolute end goal with all of this, I think.
Yeah, that's incredible. I couldn't agree more with both of you. It's something we talk about a lot, is success is fleeting and it's in the moment. How do we be happy now? And how do we create without permission?
And I think that's something that we've seen painted a lot. We saw that all day yesterday. It was many people saying, you guys are representative of the pedestal. You are at the top of the ladder for so many people. And I think it's really important to hear it's not just about, the accolades. It's about the process. It's about wanting to live your life today, not necessarily where you will get for the struggle of today. It's about how do you find.
Yeah, and personally, I'd say, that being happy. I mean, I know that we've reached a certain level of in our career, but I know that I still fail all the time. And it's not that we're in this pedestal that we can't be touched, and I still fail all the time. That's why sometimes happiness is the gauge. It's just a lot easier to find a happiness stage than to base your work, base it all off of your work. Because every day I fail and I succeed.
So, yeah.
Dis3XO has a great question. We're almost out of time, but I really want to get this one in. What's your daily routine? Do you guys have a morning routine that you keep up with, or do you have a routine that gets you into your artwork?
My kids are my routine for me.
Good answer.
Yeah, my routine is just I try to maintain, and the pandemic's helped maintain wake up and try to get yourself going by working out and exercising, and then following through the day, making sure you eat and you nourish yourself, and then I end the day by trying to spend some time with my partner. So it's trying to maintain something of a balanced lifestyle is what we also always talk about, right? Yeah.
Yep. I love that. Jan, Eman, thank you guys so much for joining us here. And beyond that, thank you so much for your efforts to demystify the industry, to talk about the confronting truths, to do the things that aren't necessarily sexy, but that really help people grow. I think you both have continually over the years and really excitedly connected together to share with people stuff and to help people find their way, not just show off the great tricks and tips, but give people the insider information that they can't necessarily get anywhere else. So this is, as the chat is saying, far too short of an interview, but this is a sample size of it. And if you guys want more from these amazing two, follow their podcast, the Art Department Podcast. Guys, where can they find it?
On all the big, on all the big, I think networks. We have some special episodes with like visuals. So YouTube is always the best place to check it out. But we are on Spotify, on Google, Apple Podcasts, and all the major networks.
Awesome,
love it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Chat, please give them a show of gratitude too, if you wouldn't mind. How amazing to have those two on, huh?
Yeah, I love their podcast. It is amazing, and you should definitely check it out. It has so many good episodes, and the episode titles too tell you exactly what you're going to get. So if you have a question like what salary should I expect, there's an episode that's called What Salary to Expect.
Yeah, I mean, truly incredible stuff. Do yourself a favor if you're curious about how this industry works. Go check that out. And we've got a pretty unbelievable day coming up. We've got Sava Zivkovic, who is a cinematics director from Destiny 2, is going to be on doing a demo in Unreal. And we've got a little bit of trivia here coming up. But before that, I want to tell y'all, we're going to be showcasing the very first look at a new music video using Kitbasch3d by Pat Galen. Pat is a very good friend of ours, Game of Thrones artist, and he stepped out to create without permission on his side to make his own music video. So we're getting just a little sample teaser of that. It's called Astronaut Spaceman. But first, let's get to a little piece of trivia. Our hints team, when they found out when we started talking about game day, they were like, hey, we got to do some trivia. And so here's the game. We're gonna read this off to you, which you can read it on the screen too. First people to throw the answer into the chat will get a free kit from Kitbash. So over the vast course of Arcade Mania history, what is the highest grossing arcade game of all time? Check out, put your answers in the chat, and then check out Astronaut Spaceman by Pat Galen. We'll see y'all in a second.
Wanna be outside looking in, astronaut spaceman. I wanna be outside looking in to my secret garden. I wanna be outside looking in, astronaut spaceman. I wanna be outside looking in to my secret garden. Secret garden. Ba, 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 ba.
Hey everybody, have you ever wondered how they make all that amazing art for video games, movies, and television? Today, we're going to explore the world of 3D art. Let's get started. We have our existing scene here that we've already painted. These guys are hot, they've had a hard day, and they need some shade. So the one thing missing from this scene is a building to cast some shadow on these guys. So, let's go over to our 3D program, and we're going to get a kit from Kitbash3d, all these wonderful buildings. This kit in particular is called the Warzone kit. Look at all this fabulous detail. Look at this. Someone went in and modeled all this stuff right here so you don't have to at home. You just got to buy the kit and then get out and start playing. And I think this guy right here is probably my favorite. Look at all that detail. So I'm going to get this building and bring that into my other scene. There we go. We're going to call it friend.obj, because who doesn't need a friend? I know I do. I'm going to place the building just like I want it. What we're going to do next is we're going to take this building into another application and light it and texture it. And that's where the real fun happens. Get ready.
Boom. Man, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We've got a piece for you that we have been very, very excited to dive into. We've got Sava Zivkovic, who is going to be doing an Unreal demo here with us. So I want to dive into that very quickly, but the answer to the last trivia question: over the vast course of arcade mania history, what's the highest grossing arcade game of all time? And the answer is Pac-Man. If you're one of the first three to get that answer correctly, you'll be getting a free kit from our kits team. And there the answers are. Congrats to Jesse and Siddhartha and Jerry Ross Bros. Right on. Without further ado, please, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Sava Zivkovic.
What's up,
Hello.
Sava?
Hey guys,
How you doing?
I'm all right, I guess. I've been speaking to Jackman like before you guys got on board, but it's a weird thing doing this from home, but at the same time, like it's nice having this because of the whole worldwide situation. Like I'm missing all of those events, so yeah, it's gonna be fun, hopefully.
I'm sad that we're not running around Europe this year together.
Yeah,
And Sava, you're at home in Belgrade, Serbia, yeah?
yeah.
What time of night is it there?
It's just 7 p.m. Yeah, so not too late. I'm usually a bit of a night owl anyway, so this is like my start of the day, really.
Oh, really? Really? How late do you usually go?
No, it's I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I used to do that. I'm trying to kind of rebalance a little bit of my work life. So now I'm kind of like taking it back and trying to be as normal as possible.
Totally. I mean, circadian rhythm's a real thing. We talk about that because we have opposite clocks. You know, Max is a morning lark and I'm a night owl too. You know, but it doesn't necessarily, Beethoven was one and Mozart was the other. So it doesn't necessarily speak to any bit of artistic prowess. It's just a thing that we're born with and we develop.
Yeah, I guess so. That too.
Well, yeah. You bring up a really good point that it is strange doing this from home, and this is our work from home edition of a festival because we know each other. I mean, I guess you guys met at IFCC in Croatia many years ago, and then Sava, you and I got to meet for the first time when Max and I were out at Playgrounds in the Netherlands. Yep. I think 2 or 3 years ago, right about the time you were doing the Build Your World video with us.
Yeah, I mean, the IFCC thing wasn't like, it seems like ages ago, but like in the grand scheme of things, it's only been 3 years. I believe it's 2017, and then you and I, Banks, we met like 2018, I believe. So yeah, like by some accounts, it's just yesterday. But yeah, it does feel like a lot of time has passed.
Yeah. Well, so much has happened in that time. You know, I think when we first met, you were premiering one of your first big short films at IFCC, and then from there, you know, you kind of exploded on the scene as this cinematics director for some of the largest video games out there. We also saw you do the Playgrounds title last year, but since then you've also been doing cinematics for Destiny, Gears of War, and Outriders. What's that job? What's it like directing cinematics for those massive franchises?
Can you hear me all right now? Just by the way.
Yeah, you
cool.
sound good.
Yeah, you cut off for a second, but I think I got the gist of the question. It's like the differences of working on those personal shorts versus like the bigger franchises that I'm working on now. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been a hell of a ride, man. Like, I mean, as you would probably imagine, I think. Like, you know, like when I think we talked about this like plenty of times, but when we've done that IFCC film, like the opening for the IFCC, and for Playgrounds, really, like those were within the same year, and both of them kind of had a big impact on kind of the direction in which I was moving in the industry. But at first, like when we actually did that IFCC film, like that was never done really to kind of, you know, like, I'm gonna do this short and then I'm gonna expect a director's job after that. Like that was never really a plan. That was never really something I could have even imagined. But it kind of happened. Like Access saw it, they reached out to me, and it just sort of happened. So I guess like the biggest difference for me is coming from a CG artist background where I was kind of a generalist and doing a bit of everything. all of a sudden you're like put into a director's seat where you're no longer thinking about the rest of the technicality of the process. You're just thinking about the creative side of the project, and not have to be involved technically while liberating. It's also like very frightening at the start because it just felt such a weird jump immediately. Like you'd be like my first reaction was, there's a giant team working on these trailers, obviously, and when my first Destiny project, like we were essentially like I was given like a storyboard artist, and he'd drawn amazing boards, and I'd say great, and then we'd get like the animators and the modelers, and they make everything look awesome, and I'd say great, and then the texture artist and the lighting artist, they do everything awesome, and I say great, and then we go into a review, and they say, wow, amazing work, Sava. And I'm like, I didn't do shit. Like I just felt like completely like, well, because it was just such a different thing overall. But I kind of like slowly started to understand, I guess, what directing is, and kind of got to appreciate that other side of it. And now I'm kind of completely locked into that, and finding that process to be, I mean, that's something I used to know, like subconsciously, that I was always drawn to the creative side of the project. The technicalities of it I still kind of enjoy. That's why I'm like demoing Unreal today probably, but I still enjoy like fiddling around with technicalities, but ultimately it's not about that for me anymore. Like long ago it wasn't. For me it's always about that creative concept of the piece, and that was something I was able to kind of identify very early on, I guess. Is just that is sort of the direction I want to be heading in. And I think like that's also probably like one of the reasons I was always drawn to doing all my personal short films. It was never a calculated, I guess, move to do these shorts and then hope that something will come out of it. I was always just, for whatever reason, I was just drawn to making as many of them as I could. And luckily, it yielded, it paid off eventually. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers the question though.
It does. I think we got a question in the chat that I think is really good, especially for everyone who's tuning in on Twitch. I don't know where you are in the world, and actually I would love for you guys to post where in the world you guys are. But Siddhartha Valuri says, how has the experience been directing cinematics remotely? I want to kind of take it one step further and say, you're in Belgrade and the studio is in Scotland. Yeah. And so, while COVID is happening, and everyone's in lockdown, this isn't too different from how you normally work. Can you talk about what it's like to direct a studio there?
It is a good question, but yeah, to your point, you're absolutely right. Like the whole COVID situation, while it is kind of awful how it impacted the world, on one end, animation is one of those industries that stayed pretty much unaffected. To me, I'm like nothing really changed because I'm usually directing remotely. Like I am working remotely with Axis. So my usual, like if there wasn't this wonderful COVID situation, usually what happens is if the project runs for say 5 months, I would work from home. I would go to the office occasionally for some key moments in production. So for example, maybe the first month of the project, I would go there for maybe a week or two while we were nailing down the story and nailing down the storyboards and the previs and the layout and stuff like that. I would then go ahead sometime like towards the middle of production once we're actually recording the motion capture shoot. So I would be directing the actors on the motion capture stage and stuff like that. That's one of the most important visits overall. And then lastly, like it's not hugely important because all reviews happen on Shotgun anyway, but I would usually go towards the end of the project when the final lighting and compositing is done, so we could kind of like have a final look of everything in the studio. That like the only thing that really changed with this situation now is the fact that I couldn't go there for the motion capture shoot. So I am on a project at the moment that because of the travels and restrictions with travels, I just couldn't be there. We've had our first remote motion capture shoot, and that was weird. That was a weird one. It turned out great though, because we kind of planned for it. I mean, everybody was aware that this is not going to be a standard situation. And what really worked is having another director from Axis on the motion capture shoot. So we were kind of driving it almost in a way that was actually like his idea, because he's also a live action director. I'm specifically for me, I'm mostly working in animation, but because of his live action experience, like he was able to kind of drive it in the way that it wouldn't be too dissimilar to how you would do it on a live action set. Like you would have a director sat in a video village, and then first AD would be with the actors, and they would have an earpiece, and then if you were in a video village, kind of looking at the monitors and llooking at the feed, you would kind of be, I guess, radioing in on the AD and like conveying the stuff for the actors in a sense, if it was like a large set. And that was essentially what we've done here. Like I've had essentially a Zoom setup where I kind of, where I saw the entirety of the mocap volume. I was able to see and hear what the actors were doing. And then on the other end, I had like a Google Hangout link with my assistant director. And I was able to just kind of have a one-line communication with him, where I was kind of immediately like, as I see what they're doing, I can feed back to him, and then he can feed back to the actors. So that was rather smooth because of that setup. It was a bit weird just getting adjusted to it, because you know, like once you're on set, like so many things can go wrong, and timings and everything, and it makes it much more easier if you're there. But I guess in the end, it didn't really impact us too much. We were able to wrap it on time. So yeah, I can't really speak from the other perspective of the studio. Like, how does that work? I know like the situation now has been going on for 6 months for Axis. They've been working 6 months remotely from home, everyone, the whole studio. And the problem at the start was just kind of setting up the remote workstations and using the network and stuff like that. Because for a studio of that size, that's kind of the biggest, I guess, problem. Not necessarily having actors actually working from home. Actors, I mean, artists. So yeah, I guess that was the, but from a studio perspective, like I think it's still from my kind of outside view in, everything looks like it's going great. We've been able to deliver projects under this crazy time, so nothing's changed much overall, I think, in the terms of how the business is run, I guess. Totally. But yeah.
Superbly insightful in a strange time for everyone as we all figure this out.
And the longest answer.
well, Sava, we could chat for this entire session, but I know you've got a demo planned. We really want to get to that. So let's dive in there.
I was gonna say planned is a strong word.
Well, let's see what you got going on. I'm sure everyone's excited. So we're looking at Unreal, and it looks like the Brutalist kit, yeah?
Yeah, it's the Eastern European in me, kind of, I guess, going for the motherland. It's I mean, I've just put it up in Unreal. It's I guess it's a very basic setup. What I have here is just the lighting. It's like a 360 HDR, I guess, of the whole scene. It's not really giving the lighting, but there's like a direct light coming in from there. And it's just like the scattered buildings. I just got them in the scene. I didn't really work on anything. I'm gonna go with because I wanted to do everything live, but reasons might be actually different. It is fun though, because I mean I obviously like seen this kit once you guys published it, but I never really like opened it. This is the first time when I opened it yesterday, is just seeing like what is actually in there, and it's really interesting stuff. Like this little guy here, like that's roughly like I guess 30 minutes, 40 minutes ish away from my place. You didn't see it, Max, when you were here, but you saw this guy, as I remember.
I remember us going to the top of that tower.
I can actually like prove it with photo images. This is Max, by the way. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but this is Max trying to do a Slavic squat in the tower, big ass concrete tower in Belgrade.
What do you mean trying?
Well, I mean, the form is kind of like this heel is coming up. You're lacking cigarettes, the tracksuit, the vodka. we can go into the whole review if you want. No, yeah, I just thought that was gonna be.
That's awesome.
That was gonna be an interesting segue, but you can cut that out for later if you want.
No, we're keeping that, and our kits team has just told us that we've got a 50% off code during this demo for the Brutalist kit. So if you use Sava 50, you can get the kit that Sava is going to be using right now at 50% off.
So that you could sing along.
So yeah, so you sing along.
Nice, awesome. Should I just like start?
Yeah, dive in.
Just do your thing, do your magic.
I have no idea what I'm doing, by the way. So the thing is, what I want to preface,
modest,
what I want to preface with this, and like,
don't preface, just go for it.
Yeah,
all right,
just go for it.
I'm very new to Unreal. That's the only thing I want to say. Like I find it.
We want to see you be human. Everything we've seen online of yours is super polished and finished and grandiose. We want to see the process. Show us some mistakes. Show us some learning. Teach us something about being present.
And I'll preface that Sava is a 3ds Max expert who this summer was like, I'm going to dive into Blender. And then right before this demo, we're like, cool, yeah, that's awesome, but can you demo in Unreal?
So we're purposely taking a look at this at Sava here in a new situation so that we can learn new stuff with him.
Yeah, that's sorry. Like this is also like the first time I'm actually demoing something, so it might go like horribly wrong, but that's fine, I guess. So I guess that's the one thing that I do want to mention is like in terms of like why I like started using Unreal is it's been up there for a while, but to me, I guess the thing with it, what fascinates me the most about it is the fact that sort of like with all the like pre-built stuff like Kitbash, like Megascan stuff and stuff like that, like you can assemble the environments like super freaking quickly, man. And with the fact that it is real-time rendering, like you're cutting down so much of the production stuff and time that goes into actually like building this thing and rendering it out. But the biggest reason, like all of that stuff, building and rendering and whatever, like those technical bits and pieces, like all of that is not really important in the grand scheme of things from the directorial perspective, if you will. To me, the chance of actually like walking around the scene in real-time lighting and exploring the scene with lighting is kind of like the biggest reason like why I wanted to use this. The real-time cinematography, if you will. Like early on in the production, if you're kind of when you're kind of figuring out the camera angles and stuff like that, where traditional methods. Let me just select this guy. See, so this is where my speed is lagging, but yeah. So if you like in traditional work environments, I guess like in general with traditional softwares like 3ds Max and Maya, like you don't have this quality of a viewport whatsoever. And when you're blocking things out with grayscale models, like compositionally, like you're only focusing on the geometry in the frame. But so much about cinematography is, well, not so much, like almost all about cinematography is the lighting. And you're losing out a huge amount of creative thinking because in animation, traditionally, lighting was so separate from the layout stage. In the layout, you would find your angles, you would compose everything to work geometrically, but then like 5 months later, you would actually get to the lighting process, and then you would start kind of lighting the scene. But you couldn't really affect the cameras and the compositions because everything is so locked, everything is so built towards that specific angle of view, you know. But with this, like with Unreal and with Blender, like that's why I've really started to dig Blender just for previous purposes. Like you can walk around the scene and have a really nice glimpse of the whole. Of the promise of the final look, if you will, because it's not up to par with offline render engines yet, but it provides for an amazing result to have early on, and that provides you with a lot of like creative decision making, because you're not just framing to gray, boring models. You're seeing light, you're seeing shadow, you're seeing reflection. all of those things like you would see if you're actually on a real set. So if you're on a real set, you would find a shadow that's nice, and you're like, oh, that looks interesting. I wasn't planning really to frame against that shadow, but maybe my actor, or I see something that I wasn't planning for, and it kind of elevates the story. And if we were just looking at, where's that unlit thing, and it's like, this even has textures, but it's completely like, it doesn't give you like that additional information that influences the creative so much. So that's my little ramble on that. I'm gonna get to work now.
Yeah, I think one of the things that for those in the chat right now who don't know too much about Sava's work, one of the things I think that makes him very unique as a director is how much of the previs he does himself. And I've seen the previs cuts that he'll put together in an insane amount of time, in a matter of days. He'll have an edit he'll have an edit with full CG previs that looks almost final in terms of the beats and the pacing of a project, and then hands that kind of over to his team to say, hey, this is the blueprint. Let's start to fill in the gaps.
It's something that we're constantly talking about, is a minimum viable product. How do you show your idea? And that's what a script is. If the best you can do is put words on a page, that's better than not having words on a page. But the moment you can start adding images to that, you can start conveying more and more ideas. And by being able to execute previs at this speed on your own is an unbelievable talent that is available to you all out there as well. If you, by using the softwares and the tools that are available to you now, you can start pushing your ideas so much further on your own, so that you can communicate that to other people as soon as you need to start bringing on more teammates.
So Sava, you've thrown atmosphere in here. You have a character going.
Yeah, it's our little IFCC dude. I just kind of felt, I want to do a little bit of a demo with the actual buildings and show everything what's going on. But I had an idea for the piece that I actually wanna have at the end of this thing. So I kind of threw in my little guy here. He doesn't have textures on. Let me see. All right, give me just 1 minute. I want to make this guy look nice. So no, this is not the right one. Fabric, metal.
I love how drag and drop that is.
Oh yeah, that was kind of very surprising, like how easy. Well, I mean, easy. Like Unreal is super easy when you set it up. The actual setting up time, like that's what kind of takes time a little bit. Actually, importing the assets and stuff like that. Once everything is in, it kind of becomes, I guess, easy. So I have here, like, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna full screen this guy, just so you see like how it all comes together. But on the other screen, I have like another view, and I'm gonna be working in that because I can remain in the perspective view and adjust everything from the point of view of the camera. Because again, like I'm using this, my use of Unreal bases on the kind of the cinematic approach, not actual in-game stuff. So what I'm interested in is does it look good from the perspective of the camera, not from every angle. It's essentially like lying. So it looks, the whole scene looks fine here, but if you go outside, like everything's broken. that's like the stuff that you do is you just where is my grid? Like that's what you do in filmmaking. If it's outside of the frame, it's not really important unless it actually impacts stuff on the frame. So yeah,
just going back a second for the setup side of Unreal, you're using the new 4.0 kits, right?
Yeah, the latest one, the latest batch.
Awesome. In case you guys haven't seen it, 4.0 kits came out a month ago with Unreal Native files. So you should be able to load them in and they should be good to go right out of the box. Did you do any adjustments or anything to the kits? Did you tweak any textures or materials, or is this straight out of the box?
This is straight out of the box, I believe. I think there was like a slight tweak on the glass shader list, I think, but it's got something to do with the depth of field. Actually, it's not. It was like for the most part out of the box, and it's already like, you know, it's just drag and drop stuff.
Awesome.
And that's the kind of the funnest part about it, I guess, is just playing with Legos. I think like everyone who uses Kitbasch3d says the same thing, is that, oh, it's like playing with Legos, because it really is. Like it's really like. All right, so give me just 1 second. So what I'm gonna do now, like I have something going on, and because like obviously like this is a very limited time for anything of substance. What is this? So yeah, I'm focusing like specifically on this sort of camera angle where I'm kind of like using this shape here. Well, first and foremost, like the shape is freaking awesome, but I'm using it to kind of block out all the, I guess, stuff that's behind it. Like with these kits, it's really simple to kind of block out the cityscape just like this by having something in the foreground that actually blocks what's happening on the ground level. Usually in 3D, like the ground level is probably like the most difficult thing to do when talking about environments. You'd be surprised like how many smaller details go into that. But with actual buildings, like you throw in like large shapes, you throw in a fog, and it's already working beautifully. And I know you guys have like other kits for the ground. I just haven't had a chance to actually pop them in the scene. But I can like adjust the fog. I can maybe, the lighting is bugging me, so let me just adjust the lighting slightly. And whichever way I find it to be working. Yeah, something like this maybe.
I feel like when I see your compositions, you always have an amazing sense of scale, and you know, it's not just the character, but it's very much the way you position the camera. You always do these very interesting graphic shapes on screen. Can you talk about why this camera, why you chose to go symmetrical, why you've made the decisions you've made here?
That's a good question. Let me think about that for a second, actually. I don't know, man. Like honestly, like I think like a lot of that stuff, like when I do this stuff, it's I honestly feel a lot of that is kind of instinctual in a way. I do think like if I find a shape that I like this guy, like it's such a strong shape that it almost like feels like, you know, like these two lines are pointing down to the center, and if you place something in the center, it's probably gonna look nice. So it's kind of based on the experience, I guess. But I mean, a lot of that is kind of instinctual in a way. It is to, like there is a lot to be said like about the actual camera angles and stuff, because that's I mean that is kind of the biggest part of my job. And once we're actually doing the productions, and let me just see one thing. I don't know why I have like a separate layer of fog. That's like fog clouds. Oh, there they are. There we go. It's animated actually. But yeah, so like when we actually do like short films, like Freight, for example, like a lot of that stuff comes in from the actual story perspective. You know, like how do you want viewer to feel when he watches this? Like, is this a happy place? Is this a sad place? What's the mental state of the character? And then how do you wanna showcase that? Let me just stop this out to save. But yeah, like you can go like, if this is an epic reveal thing, like a centered shot might imply that the character's mind state is also like he's pretty feeling centered and feeling successful, or whatever you want to call it. But then you might go something like this, where you kind of, I guess, look down on a character. Give me just 1 second. Where's my camera? This guy. And then focus. You might be looking down on him as he's climbing the stairs. So like that's saying one thing. Like just looking at this shot, like, or this moment in this whatever story it's gonna be, there's a guy climbing the stairs. All right, I don't know what that means, but like if you frame him like this, we are looking down on him, and there is like an implied statement there if you're looking down at somebody. But then at the same time, like if you take the same moment, a character climbing the steps, and you frame him like this, you're looking up at him. He looks pretty powerful, climbing these massive steps. He's pretty centered. Like that was off-centered, this is centered, and then that was looking down, and this is looking up. So it's like really like simple stuff like that, Like even like this looks very imposing. Like this looks more kind of like, he's a badass kind of a deal. But then like you go in super close from a different angle and not so powerful, right? I mean, I don't know. Like maybe you're not feeling that. Maybe it's just a subjective thing. But I do feel like that a lot of that stuff has to do with how you kind of design your camera language and your shot language, and how that kind of connects to the story. So as I was mentioning, like, I mean, we've done this, if you actually go back to IFCC, we've done this in the IFCC titles as well. Like there's a very similar shot like this at the beginning. Like when we first see our character, like this is how we see him. We're kind of looking down on him. But then at the very end of the short, he's not standing straight here and he's not in focus. But it was almost like, let's bring this guy up. We were kind of looking up at him like this. So like that's kind of like like overall over the course of the story, there's a language that's being used in the cameras that helps imply what the story is, especially like in films that are purely visually driven. This stuff is really important to kind of nail. At least from my experience, like again, like it's not really something that's super set in stone. Like there's no rules for this stuff, but it is like it's what you preach kind of a thing. Like to me, that is one of the most important things that I really like to focus on very early on. So yeah.
Feral Fox 82 in the chat asks, how do you direct your team? Is it concept drawings? Is it do you make a mini scene like this? And I think what you're showing is very much what I've seen on your other projects is you kind of put together animatics like this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't really draw. I can do some Photoshop stuff. I can do like very simple stuff like that. But where my biggest value I think is in terms of animation pipeline is actually like being aware of the whole pipeline and knowing how everything works and doing what you just said, doing all the previses and doing not all the previses. I do my initial previs where I kind of, that is my sketch in a way. Like it contains all the information in terms of framing, in terms of shot construction and kind of scene construction, but it's like very rough. But that can be like injected by the team at Axis, and then that kind of helps speed up the production because with my explanation and with those scene files provided, like that's a very clear guideline on what needs to happen. Sometimes like that really depends on the time. Like if I have the time to do that, I will do that. If not, we'll probably have the more traditional approach of actually kind of, sorry, give me just 1 second, of going through the storyboard process and the more kind of traditional animation approach. And that's fine too. Like everything has its value. Like sometimes I really do prefer the sorry, I'm just resetting my scene. I really do prefer like the 2D animated drawing kind of state of it, because like you can really imply so many things with drawing that you can't with 3D. No matter how good looking your previs is, like it fundamentally lacks that sense of motion because like super early 3D stuff tends to be super stiff. So that's one advantage of I guess the traditional 2D approach.
Gotcha.
So I switched my camera angle here. Yeah, sorry. I switched my camera angle here. I had this little Megascans area set up. Like this is something like I really wanted to make for the final I guess image that I'm gonna make, or for the final piece of animation that I'm gonna make in the following days. But this is sort of like very, I guess, reminiscent of our IFCC setup. So like what's really cool about this as well is like I can like mixing Kitbasch stuff with Megascan stuff. Like you can obviously like mix in the textures as well, but I don't have that for the architecture now. I do have it for the ground. So if I just take this guy and paste it here, it's going to give me a different result. Or this guy, this might be all right. Like it really is looking nice. And like this is one of the things that I really appreciate about Unreal is just kind of assembling stuff like this super fast.
And the megascans that Sava's referencing is a library of organic stuff like the rocks and ground plane that you see that comes free inside of Unreal.
Yeah. So like you can assemble stuff like this like super freaking fast. Pop in some rocks. Well, no, this is not gonna work. Rotate it around, just jam it in there. Like I think this is one of the the advantages of doing with this organic stuff is like it's super forgiving where you kind of placed it and how you integrate it. It all really depends on the shot, but it's super helpful. You just duplicate it, rotate it around, and it's the same thing. Like you can do it's the same approach really, whether you're using organic stuff or the architecture stuff. It's the same kind of thing. So like this stuff closer to the camera because it's out of focus implies a bit of depth and gives the whole scene a bit more depth. What I almost like feel like as more as I'm working on this stuff, like the more kind of simple I like to go. So like even like this atmospheric fog, if I go like this to me is looking freaking great. It is cutting off the Kitbasch stuff though, and so I'm gonna dial it back. I'm gonna dial it back slightly. There we go. And yeah, well, I guess like I don't know how we are on time, but I guess just one last thing that I wanted to show, and this might be more interesting. Yeah, this will be more interesting with the buildings. Give me just 1 second.
And just so you know, Sava, we got about 5 minutes, but
yeah,
do your thing.
Where is this thing? This guy. All right. So I'm just gonna go. Well, my mountain is there, so that's problematic. But let's find a different area that doesn't have a giant mountain hovering over it. I don't know. Something, whatever it is. Yeah, we'll just pop it on here. It's not a big issue. What I wanted to show is, so this is like pretty awesome stuff specifically for cinematography. Like it's not perfect, but it's really good for previs. So basically, like you have this app that you can download on your phone called the Unreal Remote app, and you just connect. And you should be able to fire up this guy. Hopefully this doesn't freak out on me on the stream. Yeah, maybe. It's working.
Wow.
Can you guys still hear me? Yeah. So
Yep.
essentially, I don't know if you can see me as well, but essentially like I'm controlling the camera with my phone now. And this isn't just like staying in place. I mean, I can't stand up and walk around now, but if you were to walk around, like you actually go into space, like maybe I can like demo of it. It's gonna be like really difficult because this is like such a large scale environment, but effectively like you're looking through your phone, and I don't know if you can see it, but like I can see it in my phone screen as well. So it is like your actual little virtual camera setup just on your iPhone. And this is like the shitty one. This is like the old one, the super old iPhone, but it still works like beautifully. And
Right.
And you can play animations from here. You can like record the characters move around, and then you can find like interesting compositions and shots. You can record all of this camera movement. Like if I press the red button thing, it's gonna give me a little prompt, and then it's gonna start recording.
And you could have characters animated through here that you'd be moving around and shooting.
Oh yeah, you can move them around. You can prompt them like you would actors. Like you have your little files set up. What's gonna happen here? You can have your little like I guess file set up, and you just play like you can prompt them when they start moving. You can I guess tell the camera to constantly focus on them. There's a lot of awesome stuff you can do, and it's like really like specifically made for I guess virtual production. It is though a bit laggy on the phone, but you can use an iPad for it, and with an iPad it works much better, and as well you have like a much larger screen. But it's I think it's an awesome thing.
I mean, it is the at-home avatar setup.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but it's definitely cool, man.
I mean, and the applications as we head more into virtual space, into AR, into VR, that's a pretty unbelievable tool to have at your fingertips, especially when we start talking about like minimum viable product, previs kind of ideals.
I don't know what the.
Well,
yeah, sorry.
Sava, what I'd love to, in our last time together, I want to chat about what is coming up for you. What's next for you? You're at Axis directing some big cinematics. We just saw the Huxley teaser that you directed, premiered here yesterday. What can people expect from you next?
Let me just find something that's a bit more pretty to look at, I guess. No, nothing's gonna work. It's just a bunch of stuff. Sorry to end on such a weird frame, but this is gonna have to do. Is this shot 10? Yeah. Shot
I mean,
10.
in 32 minutes of demo time,
I managed to make this.
You put together two separate shots with the character and demoed real time using your phone as the lens within your 3D scene. I mean, not bad, buddy. Probably not what to be expected from your disclaimer at the beginning. I think you nailed it.
It was fun, but yeah, just to real quick answer Max's question. So yeah, I mean the teaser that premiered yesterday, that like as Ben stated, that's part of a larger thing that we're working on at the moment. Obviously, like I am sort of not really full time with Axis, but there's a lot of projects kind of cooking up there as well. And apart from that, like we've taken a bit of a break from our usual, I guess, short film, if you want to call it a schedule. It's not really a schedule, but every year we try to do at least one of our personal short films. We've been on a bit of a break for that this year because we were planning, and we are still planning, something bigger. So hopefully you'll see more of that in the future. But yeah, that's really like all I gotta say about that right now. Focusing in on more real-time stuff, and definitely with those upcoming short films that I plan on, I really plan on using Unreal on pretty much all of them, because it's such a game changer. It's a steep learning curve for somebody who's been adjusted to one way of working for over 10 years. It's not 3ds Max, it's not Blender, and don't expect it to be, because you just get frustrated. But once you accept it for what it is, it's a games engine. It's primarily made for video games, but you can do cinematics in it. So it's a different mindset a little bit, but once you get through it, like I think it really has a lot to offer. So yeah, definitely gonna be using more of that.
I love that. And speaking of cinematics, at the break here, we're gonna show the Build Your World cinematic that you made using all the Kitbash kits. Darren Butler asked, any more Kitbash3d cinematics? We'll save that for another day. Sava, thank you so much for joining us. We could not be more honored to have you here, and you've shown us some really cool insights that I think a lot of people out there in the chat will be able to really glean some interesting stuff and bring it into their own work.
Yeah, and you can see his Instagram link in the chat right now. Follow him on Instagram. Check out his Vimeo, and his Behance also it just has so much cool making of stuff. Sava, thank you so much.
Yeah, everyone in the chat, please.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Sava. We'll see you, man. Please, everyone in the chat, throw some gratitude towards Sava.
Bye.
See you, pal.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
All right. I mean, super, super cool stuff. Very interesting to see him work so fast.
And it's amazing to see how instinctual, he used the word instinctual, and I think that really is it. You see him get a camera in his hand and he just puts it in the right place every time.
Mm-hmm. And he came from architecture before this, right?
Yeah.
Well, we've got a pretty incredible show, so we have to keep this rolling. Up next, we have Lual Mayan and Rami Ishmael. Lual has an unbelievable story. He was a Sudanese refugee, and now is a game developer. He's come to the States here, and Rami Ishmael is a very well-known video game ambassador, and the two of them have a pretty cool story to share with you all. And then coming up after that, we've got Andy Park from Marvel Studios, Leah Augustine from Apex Legends, going to show some environment art. We've got Sparth, we've got David Levy. It's going to be a smash day. I wanted to address a couple things from the chat because we see you guys there. We're reading the chat the whole way through. I just didn't want to disrupt Saba. These videos will go up onto our YouTube channel, Kitbasch3d on YouTube. We do not have a release schedule for them yet because it was a huge undertaking to get us here, and we'll figure out some of the posts there. So it'll probably be a little while before they come out, but they will be coming out over time, so be sure that you subscribe there. Dilated Perspective also asked a question about interns. It's a really good question, and lots of people right now are trying to figure out what to do when they graduate. We will be addressing some of those things with Andy Park coming up a little bit later, so please stick around for that. Lastly, thank you all so much for being so awesome in the chat. The positivity you guys are bringing, the welcomes and the thank yous that you give to the artists, your questions, it's all super, super very cool. So please keep going with that. We saw you all when we asked where you guys are coming from. It's unbelievable to see that list. People in Cape Town, people in Algeria, India. We're here in Los Angeles. Playgrounds is in the Netherlands, who we're teamed up with to co-produce this event with us, and they're streaming. This is a truly global affair. We've got people all over the States. I even saw OK Tiger in there from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, which is where I am from. And I believe that's my mom. I couldn't be more excited to see you here, Mom. Thank you for joining us. My mom's an architect as well, so I know she was very excited to see Saba. And that's where we're headed. So
we're going to watch Build Your World, which is the cinematic that Saba directed using the Kitbash kits. And when we come back from the break, we'll be on with Lual and Rami. So thank you guys, and we'll see you in a bit.
And the bundle here is our sale of the summer. So if you want, you can get buy 2 kits, get 1 free, or buy 3 kits, get 3 free using the codes that you see on your screen there at kitbash3d.com. Thanks a lot. Watch the Build Your World, and we'll see you in a second.
So the advantage of 3D over 2D is simply that you're able to move through space, basically. If you're interested in photography, I would strongly suggest learning 3D because it'll allow you to understand all the finite details of how cameras work. And you could test any camera's abilities as much as you like because you have an infinite amount of choices. I always think like, what would Stanley Kubrick do with like the 3D programs I use? You know, it'd probably blow his mind because of the choices, you know? But I also think it's really important to be inspired by the reality of a real camera and understanding how that mechanism works, understanding how light works, how to capture moments, and letting that feed the CGI. Because a lot of times I think with CGI, it's so easy to make something that's lifeless or dull or dead because it's so perfect and it's so pristine. I'm always thinking about the intention, like what am I trying to say here and what am I trying to do? Am I making something that moves? Am I making something that's still? Almost always, it comes from the intention of the emotion that I'm trying to evoke from my audience at the end of the road. It's the most amazing thing to make an imaginary, completely produced world and be able to move around in it and see it real time. It's like, come on, it's the best. You're basically making your own worlds.
And we are back, folks. What an amazing demo from Sava Zivkovic. Such a treat to have him on the show.
Yeah. I mean, he's been, we've been at just about every event with him for the last couple of years. It's cool to do it online.
And if you all enjoyed the Build Your World video that Sava made, throw some daps in the chat to Sava for that. He did that video, speaking of speed, he did that video alone in 2 weeks, which I think is unbelievable. I think he used 9 Kitbasch3d worlds to do that. But moving right along here, we are incredibly excited to have Luol Mayan and Rami Ishmael on the show with us. Gents, what is going on?
I'm good. It's been a day, but yeah, I'm good. Luol, you?
Yeah, I mean it's a great day here in DC, so it's kind of getting cold, but it's pretty good. Like you know, I'm from South Sudan, where it's really so hot there. So for me, like when it's getting like into the fall, like it's a different thing for me.
The fall can be so beautiful in DC, Luol.
Exactly.
Do you like it?
Yeah, sometimes I love it a lot. Yeah, definitely.
Super cool. And then Rami, you're coming to us from the Netherlands, right?
Yep, I'm in the Netherlands right now. It is also fall here, although it's. I mean, I'm half Dutch, half Egyptian, but I'm pretty used to it. I love the fall, so I'm very excited for it.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have a pretty unbelievable story here that we are really excited to dive into. Luol, you grew up in South Sudan, and you were a refugee in northern Uganda, right?
Yes, yes. So my family is from South Sudan, so they had to flee South Sudan to like northern Uganda. So most of my childhood and when I was born between the border between South Sudan and Uganda. So then I spent most of my time actually in Uganda, and yeah.
And so at what point did you start developing video games?
Yeah, actually, like, and that's a very good question, and that's something like a lot of people ask me like every time, like, what first came into your mind? And first of all, like for me to start even making game, I did not know what video games are before. So I really had to first understand like the purpose and the power of game and what we can be able to do with game. So when I first had my first interaction with video game, I was like, wow, these are so powerful. And looking at my experience at where I come from, I felt like, we could do something special. This could be like something that is gonna be helping like people in the world. So like games alone, I always tell people are not like, when I was talking about purpose, they're not like movies where you sit on your couch and then watch a movie. You know, when you're playing a game, you're like you're making decisions, you're interacting, it become like part of you. And when I first play a game like that, that was the first thing that I felt. That was the first thing that I will wow, they're amazing. I have to do something with it.
I think that's so fascinating. I remember you told me before
Yeah.
to get your first laptop, your mother had to make some pretty great sacrifices to be able to get that laptop for you, right?
Yeah, it was really crazy. I remember like actually the first time I saw a computer was 2007, and it was like during a refugee registration because they were like registering refugees, and I saw a computer and I was like, what is that? And my mom was like, that's that's a computer. I was like, how did you even know it? Because she never been to school as well. And to me, like I was like, it's something crazy. So after like years, I came to her and I said, hey mom, I want to buy a computer. And she looked at me, she was like, what are you going to do with a computer? There's no place where you can charge a computer. There's nobody that's going to be teaching you. So like it's like me asking something so crazy, but because she was like a mom to me, she kept quiet. And in a refugee camp, there was no money at all. So she went like start like saving $300 for 3 years to get for me my first computer. And and when I got a computer, I was like, wow. I was like, what am I gonna do with it now? So it's like, am I just gonna keep it there? Like, is it like in the museum or like? Because there was nothing to do. And then that's where I had to like really do a lot of research. Where can I charge a computer? What can I be able to do with it? And then that's where like even a friend of mine installed for me Grand Theft Auto, and I didn't know that like video game have been created by people. So like that scene alone like just gave me the energy and to be able to find like what my purpose is. Yeah.
I love that. And talking about purpose, it's so incredible to think your mother spent working 3 years to get you your first computer, and to even charge your computer up, you had to walk 3 hours a day sometimes, right?
Yeah, like and that was like the worst thing because like in the refugee camp, so I would have to walk 3 hours, and then sometime the worst moment is I go there and there's no fuel in the generator, so then I and then I have to come back home because there's no power to charge it. Sometimes it's gonna be raining on me. So they were like, oh, this thing, but for me, I was like, my mother's worked for it. I have something now. I have the resource to be able to utilize. So I did not care a lot what was going on around me. So I just wanted like to make sure, and I was proud because like I was the only kid in the refugee camp that had a computer. So like for me, like wow, like I have something special. Like yeah.
And this is just so incredible, and the chat is agreeing here that despite all of this great adversity in a refugee camp in northern Uganda, walking 3 hours to charge up your computer, which your mother worked 3 years to get you to have the computer, and you were the only one. Despite all of that great adversity, you built your game, Salam, and you released your game to the world.
And actually with that, and that was actually one thing that really inspired me so much when I first played the game. As Rami always say, like it's the purpose of the game is how we're gonna be using the game. It's about like how people are gonna be like interacting with the game, and to me when I started like making game, I was like, what can I do with it? What is something that is missing that I can be able to relate, because I feel like games are amazing tool that we can use to like tell stories and think that I was part of. And when you look at South Sudan, it's a very country like that has been going through so much war. So I was like, what can I do in the game to help people understand what peace building is? So it's bringing something that a lot of people never thought like maybe the game industry can do that, but we can do anything with a product, as long as you understand what you want to accomplish with it. And that was actually like what inspired me so much to be able to think about, okay, if I want to make a game, what can I do next? I want to like get tutorial on how to make game, how to design game. Somebody have to make sound for me. So all those things, like nobody was there, but I already had like a purpose. I already had a target of what I want to achieve. And with that, I was like, my first game was actually less than 10 MB, like a very small game, because my main focus was I want to distribute it using Bluetooth. I couldn't have App Store where I can upload it. And with that, I really want to do something for kids in the refugee camp to have time to play. Yeah. And that's how like I distributed on I put it on my Facebook page, and people start sharing it, and the next thing happened. I found myself in South Africa.
I mean, such an incredible story of perseverance, and the chat is going right where my head was going. No one is allowed to have any more excuses for why you didn't get your thing done. You got to make it. And so, as Lil was saying, he putting the game out got the attention of some game convention runners in South Africa. And Lual, you went to South Africa, and that's where you met Mr. Rami Ishmael, right?
Yes, that's how I met Rami. Yeah.
So Rami, if y'all don't know, is an incredible ambassador of games. He's also a very successful game developer in his own right. He was one half of Lambier, and is truly one of the main ambassadors of indie game development worldwide. Rami, how did you hear about Lual, and how did you guys get connected?
I heard about Luau in South Africa after his game had sort of spread around the world and gotten the attention of a convention in South Africa. It was kind of a very continent-based convention that I really liked going to, and I met Luau there actually in a breakfast, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
At the hotel that we were staying in. And yeah, I mean, I basically got the same story all of you just got, and it was remarkable. Like, it was a remarkable story of perseverance, and what surprised me was how focused Lual's ideas were. Right, I come across a lot of new and upcoming game developers, some with training, some without training, some with schooling, some without schooling. But the thing that stood out so much about Lual is he knew that he wanted to use games for something special, not just to make a video game, but no, these games had an idea behind them, and I think that is very critical if you want to make good games or interesting games. And Lual had this little prototype of Salam, and he showed it to me, and I played it, and I gave him some feedback, and I think, Lual, you were kind of stuck with where to go next.
Exactly. Yeah, that was like, and even like the biggest thing actually, like that was my first time actually meeting with game developers or game designers. So like when I had that conversation with you, I was like, yeah, like what can I do? Like, and I remember you told me like, hey, how about you create like a game developers association in South Sudan, like, so that you can have that community, because that's something that can be able to help me. Like all those ideas, we just had them. And I remember the next year I did a global game jam for the first time, because like that alone just gave me the energy to like create like even kids in the refugee camp to like be able to like even have jam and stuff like that. Yeah.
So yeah, it was sort of a fascinating meeting, and I think Lual from there went on to establish an association for like-minded developers or developers in similar situations, and he's been a very like ardent ambassador. Like the story is automatically inspiring. So it was not. A lot of people ask like, how did you help? And like the honest thing is, I just told Lual's story to the people that would be interested in it. And like if Lual ever got stuck, we had a phone call and caught up, and we just chatted about stuff. But like the driving force behind Lual is Lual and his unique life experience and the unique willingness to take that experience and turn it into something purposeful for other people. And even to this day, like it's incredible to see how far he is, because we met in what, 2016?
Yeah, 2016. Yeah.
Like in 4 years, so much has happened around Lual, and it's because of Lual, right? This is not something that happens to him. This is something that he wills into being, and that is, yeah, it's incredible.
I think that's so amazing and so awesome for everyone to hear, that by locking into your purpose, you can be driven. Lual, it's taken you so much to get here, and I've heard you say it's one thing to have a great story, it's another thing to have a great business model. And can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing next? You've come so far locked into your passion. Where does this ride continue now?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that's something like we should think as independent designers and developers, or like creators, or like small studios, and that's one, like as Rami was saying, like Lual has done this, which is for me, I know it's my responsibility to utilize what people give me, because that's they have given me the access, right? And when I have a great story, and then I have to think about like, okay, how do I sustain this? How do we sustain what we create? And that's something we should think about as creators, because like you're going to be developing a game environment where somebody is going to be living their life for the rest of their life, because they're playing, like it become part of them. And that's when I look at game for good, it's a great category. It sounds good, it sounds amazing, people would love to hear it, but like, how are we going to sustain something like this? And one example I always tell people is that, like, when we look at the game industry, it's an industry that is put up by people who love what they want to play. And when I look at great games, game for good, game for this, and I give an example of Netflix. When you go on Netflix, there are all kind of movies. There are horror movies, there are action movies. They're like, you just choose what to play. And that's something I'm thinking about as a creator, someone who's creating game for good. I want to see, like, is this game just going to be a non-profit? Is this game going to be like having like a business model for it, so that it can be able to sustain it, so that I can be able to even publish in the future, maybe on different, on PC and thing like that. So that's something like I really think about, and something that what we think about as creators. And second to that is like I'm releasing Salam, which is like the second version of it. So it's like a game that put actually a player in the shoes of a refugee. And in the game, I've been working with Facebook Gaming a lot, because to be able to, like, they've been helping me. We have like in-app purchase in the game, because when you buy something in the game, you're actually buying somebody in the refugee camp, water, food, and things like that. So those are like model we are looking into. We are also going to be like partnering with other organizations to be able to like make this a reality. And that's something I've been like working for the last year or so. Yeah.
I think that is just so amazing that the story of the game, the character goes from a war-torn environment to a peaceful environment, and then in-app purchases can lead to actually bringing food to the refugee camps.
I mean, and I and I mean, I always tell people, like, we're industry. Yeah, we are a huge industry, and we don't have to think that we have to be a charity to make a world a better place. Like, whatever you're creating is, you're making a world like your people are playing. So even the industry, even like like, yeah, if you can go around, yeah.
It's amazing how much amazing new ideas and good that can come out of indie games. When there's this kind of new world that hasn't really been around that long, but has kind of surfaced recently with so much creativity and so many new takes on how the game industry is going. And Rami, you've been a consistent ambassador of that world. I know when we were putting out our game, we started looking into what is this indie game world, and you were one of the champions of it that came up time and time again. Why is this world important to you?
Well, I think every game has a fingerprint, right? And the more people are working on a video game, the more fingerprints are on it. And that is cool, but it also sort of muddies the vision that a game can have. Well, if a game is made by a small team of people that are, like Luau, are often working against a lack of opportunity, against a lack of access, you have to be creative, and you have to be intentional, and you have to be purposeful. And I love my AAA games, but I think what I love about the indies is that they have that personality of the creators, that little bit of soul that is unique. And for me, the exciting thing is having gone around the world the past decade or so. Every country I go to, I meet new people with new perspectives, with new attitudes, with new ideals. Just like Luau, where I had never considered that a video game could come out of a refugee camp near South Sudan, right? Like, that was not, you think of the games industry, it's really quick to think the US, the UK, Japan, and kind of be done with it. But in all these places around the world, there are luau's, right? There are people that have a unique purpose, a unique drive, a unique story, and they just want to make video games. So
that's amazing. And right now you're working on gamedev.world, which is, I'll let you tell it better than I can, but you're bringing all of these different indie developers from around the world together. Can you talk about what that project is?
Yeah, GameDev.world is an online games conference, kind of just like this one, or like the Game Developers Conference, which is one of the largest games conferences in the world. And I think the idea of GameDev.world was to break the language barrier, right? Like if you're listening to our conversation, it's in English right now, and Lual is very fluent and very eloquent in English. But there are many Luals around the world that are not. And for me, it was a goal to see if we can break that language barrier, allow people to speak in their own language, but also to learn in their own language. So the whole idea of GameDev.world is that all content can be spoken in any of the 8 major languages of the world, and will also be translated to all of those 8 languages of the world. So people can speak the language they know, and they can learn in the language they know.
That's amazing. And when's the next event coming up so that people in the chat can tune in?
So for now, we've been delayed a bit by the coronavirus situation around the world. We are working on it. It is a digital event, but we will hopefully have news very soon on when a next installment would be.
Great. Well, for everyone out there, where can people find you and keep up with Salam, the game, and GameDev.world and everything that you guys are doing?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, you can go on junubgame.com. That's the best way, like where all our sources are. Yeah.
Junub is Junub, right?
Yeah. Junub.
Beautiful, beautiful word. Yeah, for me, the easiest way to follow me right now is Twitter, which is @THA_Rami, as I announce new plans and new things to do.
Amazing.
_Rami, and y'all's Instagrams are also in the chat there. Thank you, alternate. Thank you guys so much. We could listen to you guys talk for a very long time, and the work you guys are doing is so important and so purposeful and so full of passion. Thank you for the great contributions you are making, and thank you for the example you are setting for all of us here today. Everyone in the chat, please give a very warm thank you and gratitude towards both Rami Lual, Lual Mayed and Rami.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Guys, looking forward to keeping up with you. Please, if there's anything we can do to help on your journey, let us know, and we'll talk again really soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Wow. Thank you in the chat for showing up. What an incredible story, huh?
Yeah, we talk a lot about the big AAA games during this show, but the indie world has so much incredible creativity and so many really impactful projects happening right now. And they might not get the same kind of spotlight as, the billboards plastered around town, but they're definitely worthy of it. And so hopefully we can showcase more and more of that.
Yeah, I think, Rami has done such an amazing job of being an ambassador for all game devs around the world. And I love just hearing Lual's story of perseverance. I think that I'm going to keep with me, and I'm going to remind myself of that when I think something's hard for me. I hope we all can take something with us from that. And we're going to keep moving on here. We've got Andy Park coming up next, who is the director of visual development at Marvel Studios. So he's been behind many of the most fantastic franchises of the last decade.
Yeah.
So tune in for that.
And after that, we got Leah Augustine from Apex Legends. We'll have Spark joining us, who's the art director of the Halo franchise. And we got David Levy and the Unity team doing some really cool stuff.
And we just kicked off a contest here. Our contest is the KB3D contest, #KB3D contest. If you go on to kitbasch3d.com, you can get the free Neo City kit and then post your work using that hashtag to either Instagram or Facebook. And these contests for us have been a really awesome way for us to connect with the community like you all are in the chat. Michaela there, shout out to her, who's in the chat now. She won the KB3D contest in the Post-Apocalypse KB3D contest, and she'll be on the show tomorrow to talk about that. Hi, Michaela. But go on, join the contest. We've had artists in over 100 countries compete in this contest. It's been a really amazing thing for us to get to all come together as a community. And one extra really cool part about the contest this time is the artists on game day will also be the judges panel for this KB3D contest. And some of them, like Patrick O'Keefe, Ben Morrow, David Levy, who you see later today, we'll be actually giving portfolio reviews and paint overs to some of the winners. So if you want to have your work seen, if you want to get some one-on-one wisdom from some of these artists, join in that. And we got a piece of trivia as we go into break here. So we all love animated movies, but what was the first feature-length animated movie ever released? Put your answer in the chat. The winner gets a free, the first 3 people to get the right answer get a free kit. And we will be right back after this Pro Series video.
Today, there is a digital art revolution. Almost every aspect of our daily lives has an aspect of design and art involved in them.
I believe that we're in the Renaissance age for CGI. It's creating this really exponential rate of growth that's amazing.
If you took a student from today and teleported them to 20 years ago, like they'd be considered like an industry renowned artist for the quality of the work that they're doing.
Techniques that professionals use were once these hidden secrets. Like you have to work next to this guy and pass through the gates of approval sit next to this guy for like a couple of years, and then he might show you a trick or two. But nowadays, with technology and software, internet, people are learning a lot about technique.
We're all students of it, and I think it's really important to constantly be a student of art, because there's one thing about art that no one will master it.
Before the digital age, everything used to be hand painted, and you cannot just explore this random cool idea because the investment of time in painting something it's really deep. But in Photoshop, you can say, hey, I wonder if I can put something here really quick. Let me just lock it in.
For our industry, what's exciting when I think of the future is that tools are coming that we can't even imagine that are going to be so much fun to use.
Today's day and age of digital tools is helping the world of concept design expand tremendously.
Whether you're 12 or whether you're 25 or 40 and you have an interest in the arts, specifically the entertainment arts, it is a growing industry. It's an industry that hasn't stopped growing since the birth of cinema.
If you're watching this and this gets you excited, then I say 100% you need to dedicate all the time and energy you have in understanding what it is what we do, and really understanding the basics and getting yourself into it, really. There's only one way to approach this, and it's head first, 100 miles an hour.
Okay, everybody, now that our building's ready, let's jump in and do some painting. That's where the real fun happens. Okay, so now let's cut our building on, and let's welcome it to the neighborhood properly. So our render came in perfectly. Now all I gotta do is add a little bit of lighting and really put it in our scene by giving it the proper atmosphere, making it feel welcome, making it feel like it belongs. Make everybody happy. Okay, so we're painting in a little atmosphere, a little light haze. So you can see right here, we got all this smoke and all this beautiful atmosphere and life through this scene. And what we want to do is just very easily cut our opacity down and just ghost some of that atmosphere right on top. Just going in, have a little fun. There's no wrong way to doing it. And if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. So now let's go in and add a little bit of light to this. What we want to do, we want to take our layer here and change our mode over here to screen mode. So there's a little bit of sun poking through all this dust and haze. Okay, this is in a really good place now. Now we got this building, we have the right amount of atmosphere, the right amount of shading. It's about in the scene where I want it to be depth-wise. Okay, look how fast that was. All right, so now that we have the atmosphere taken care of, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to add our lighting and our texture. That's going to be fun. I'll see you there.
What's up, guys?
What's up, guys?
We're back.
Here we are. What an amazing last segment that was.
Yeah, I mean, no excuses.
No,
I feel like that's one of the common threads of this whole show is we just hear constantly the perseverance, and I get inspired by that of seeing not just like here's people at the top of their game, but here's how they overcame all the roadblocks along the way.
Totally. I mean, right? Like this is one of the most sought after professions in the world. We're making movies and video games here, the things that the entire world sees and the entire world loves. If you have the passion and the drive to get into this, you also have to have the discipline and the grit to make it. And I think no story is more exemplary of that than Lual's. We were just talking about how I don't think we will remind ourselves of that next time we pretend like we have an excuse.
Yeah. What I love also about this show is we get to see a lot of different perspectives around this industry. Both Lual and Rami working in the indie games world, which is just this amazing bed of creativity. And on the other side of it, we have some of the largest studios, which are also constantly producing, incredibly creative and amazing work. And today we have this incredible guest who I'm so excited to chat with from Marvel Studios, the head of visual development, Andy Park.
Andy, what is up, man?
Hey, but just real quick, that's not my title.
Oh no.
That one belongs to Ryan Meinerding. My title is Director of Visual Development.
Director of Visual Development. Exactly.
Gotcha. Can you explain? Because I'm sure I don't have a grasp on it, and I'm sure the Twitch chat would love to know what's the difference between those titles, or what is a Director of Visual Development, and what do you do at Marvel?
Yeah, as the Director of Visual Development, like I got hired like 10 years ago, but then about 5 years ago, I got promoted. So before it was Ryan and Charlie when they were leading the group on all our films, the Viz Dev department. And then now it's me and Ryan that are leading the team on these movies. And because we have so many movies and Disney streaming shows at the same time going on at the same time, we split the responsibility for the past 5 years, where he's leading 2-3 films at the same time, and then I'm leading the other 2 or 3 films at the same time. So our whole department, our main job is to design the characters. That's our main focus, as well as keyframes that the initial keyframes that we do in the beginning of the filmmaking process to help illustrate what this movie, the look and feel can be. So we're in the very beginning of the process.
I'm sure that is so many people's dream jobs, to design superhero characters. I mean, I know as a kid, I was always on the side of my notebook drawing superheroes. What is this like for you to actually be doing it day to day? Is it still that dream job that most people think it is?
Yeah, I was the same way, junior high, high school. That's when I fell in love with comics, and I was drawing while the teacher's talking on the side. Back then we had like book covers. We had to put like paper over the book, the textbooks that you get. And then I would just fill that up, and all my classmates, and they all know that I would just fill those up, and they would ask me to draw on their books as well. But yeah, it is definitely, I've been here for 10 years working on the MCU, and I still sometimes, pinch myself and be like, wow. And especially seeing the, success of the MCU in the past 10 years, like I could never have dreamt of all of this happening. So yeah, I'm still tripping out.
Well, let's go back to some of those early days that you mentioned, where you had this great love and passion for art. You were drawing on the sides of class. You were the only artist in your family, right?
Yeah. My parents immigrated from Korea in the 70s. With my 2 older siblings, they were born in Korea. So I was the only one that was born in the States, in Bronx, New York. And no one in my family are artists. And I don't have any relatives that were artists. The closest was my uncle, who was an architect, but I didn't get to see him very much. But so I had no artists around me. So it was just something that I just picked up. I remember my earliest memories when I was 5, and drawing at some there was some Korean festival thing, and the day before we went to a circus. So in that contest, for some reason I drew the circus that I remember going to. And then I won like first place, whatever. And I won this big old trophy. And I just remember that was my first a memory of being like, wow, I got some attention for something, so maybe I have something that not everyone else has. And then, so I just always enjoyed drawing, as far as I can remember.
If you think back to some of those days, what do you think were some of your early sources of inspiration? Was it Sunday morning cartoons? Did you find comic books?
Well, it's definitely Saturday morning cartoons. I don't know if they had Sunday morning cartoons, but definitely cartoons were definitely, I grew up in the 80s, right? So it was all about cartoons like Transformers, G.I. Joe, Robotech, Thundercats, all of those goodies. And then I think definitely that was my main love, right? And then it wasn't until like junior high, in the late 80s when I discovered comic books, and that's when my world changed.
Were you a Marvel or DC fan back then?
I was almost strictly a Marvel fan. Like the first comic book I still remember the first comic book I ever picked up was Iron Man number 200, because I saw that cover, and I've known of that character, the gold and red suit, but Iron Man 200 debuted a new suit where it was silver and red, the Silver Centurion suit, and I was like, what is that? And I just I fell in love with that, and from that point on, I started collecting, Spider-Man and X-Men and all those other Marvel comics. I would dabble in reading some DC comics, but for some reason they never really connected with me, because I think I was always really into the more real world, more down to earth, relatable, versus I think the DC characters, for me, at least for me, were always more godly, and like it was just a little bit more detached. So I just really, really gravitated towards the Marvel universe.
At what point did you make the decision to pursue art as an actual career?
I think, throughout junior high and high school, and then by that time, that was the early 90s. So comic books were huge at that point. X-Men, and then the artists were becoming really, really like superstars, like Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane, Mark Silvestri, Rob Liefeld, so many different artists. And then by that event, they all broke out and started Image Comics. So that's where it really fed my hunger and desire to be like, oh my gosh, and Wizard magazine. So it was, and this is pre-internet, right? So this is where you're getting your information of what art is in the entertainment field. And I think during those years, especially my high school years, I was like that's when I started really dreaming of becoming a comic book artist. But I remember never knowing during those years, like if I'd ever become good enough to get to that professional level. But I drew just because I loved it, right? And I kept on, I ate up as much as I can. Back then, there wasn't much that you can get a hold of. So Wizard magazine was golden, right? Because I don't know if you guys remember that, but they would have like tutorials by Bart Sears, the Brutes and Babes, or eventually it was Greg Capullo, and he would do like art tutorials every month. And I was like, that was my art class, right? I was just like, oh my gosh. And then there was something called Comic Book Greats. There's this VHS tape where Stan Lee would actually interview some superstar artists, like, again, Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Will Portasio, and I just ate those up as well. So yeah, it was during those years that I was really like, I would love to become a professional artist, but I don't know. I don't have, the confidence that the level where I'm just like, oh, of course I'm going to become a comic book artist. No, I didn't know if I was good enough, again, because everyone around me, they're not artists. My parents telling me, oh my gosh, you're so good. That means nothing. Like, of course, I love you, mom and dad, for telling me that. But when I'm trying to think objectively, that's what I mean when it means nothing. Of course, it means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know if I was, where I was, skill wise.
Well, and so after high school, you went to UCLA, and you were actually studying fine art, but then you went to Comic-Con, right?
Yeah. I went to college like a good Korean boy. But again, I was very ignorant. I didn't know I never had any professional training. So I wanted to know, where am I at? Should I just, forget about this dream of becoming a comic book artist? or is it something worth pursuing? Because when I went to UCLA, one of the first classes I took was a drawing class, and I was like, yes, finally I get some professional training or real training. And we had like a figure. I was like, oh, I want to do figure drawing because I want to learn anatomy and all the basics. And I remember I drew the figure, and then afterwards the teacher came over and he told me, don't draw what you see, draw what you see beyond your eyes. And I was just like so confused. I was like, but I want to draw what I see. That's the whole point. So I quickly realized that being an art major at a basic university like UCLA means fine art. And I quickly realized like I'm not a fine artist. Like I'm not that deep. I'm more into representational art. I want to be able to draw, reality and bend it to my own style and all that stuff. But I wanted to learn the foundations. So as you mentioned, that after my freshman year, I've amassed a couple, just like maybe like 4 or 5 pages of artwork that I've done comic book oriented, like centric, with some of them, some pinups, but definitely some sequential work that I kind of came up with. And I went to Comic-Con, which the year before was my very first San Diego Comic-Con that I ever went to. And I was just blown away because that's the first time I ever saw a professional artist in my life. And I remember standing in front of like these 2 guys at Artist Alley, a guy named Richard Bennett and Aaron Weisenfeld. I never heard of, I didn't know who they were, but I could see their portfolio, and seeing professional artwork for the first time just blew my mind. And I remember standing at their table for like 4 hours, just watching them draw. And I was so shy. I didn't even talk to them. So I don't know what they were thinking. They're like, who is this little Korean kid standing, like not talking to us? They were also kind of very timid and shy too. So, but so going back to San Diego Comic-Con the following year after my freshman year, I had my portfolio in hand with the intention of getting a critique. I had no intentions of trying to get a job because I didn't think I was good enough. I just want to know, like, where am I at? What do I need to improve on? Like, I'm sure a lot of people here at Lightbox, a lot of young students are coming here with the intention of like networking and trying to get their work looked at. And I remember there was portfolio review lines at San Diego Comic-Con. And I remember the first line I went into, because where I wanted to go was image. I really wanted to get into image, right? And those lines are like hours long. So I'm waiting there for like 2-3 hours. And when I got to the front of the line, a lot of times when you're watching other people getting critiqued, it's by some editor that you never heard of or never seen. It's not by one of those, one of the image founders that But I was lucky that the person who, when I went up to the front of the line, was Rob Liefeld. So he got to look at my work. He was checking it out. He was saying some stuff. And then at the end, he said, would you be interested in an internship? And I was just like, what the heck? Like, yes, right? But I was like, that blew my mind, because I was just like, I'm just here for a critique, and he's offering me an internship. So from there, he said, okay, so it's the following week, you're going to come in again to the studio in Anaheim, and we're going to have like a follow-up kind of interview. So yeah, I
think it's so cool. And whether or not these moves from you were strategic, you had some pretty strong moves there. You put together a succinct portfolio that showcased your work. You identified that image, of all the places available to you, image was the one that you wanted. And then you went after that one and put yourself in position to have the right opportunity. I think everyone's luck follows the amount of thought and time and work that puts you into that preparation to get there.
Oh, totally. That's always the case. Yep.
Yeah. So from Image, where did you go from there?
Image, and then I worked for Rob for Extreme Studios for 2.5 years, and then it was great. I was in a bullpen full of artists in their early 20s, and I learned so much there, right? But after about 2 years, I kind of had this weird inkling where like, or just kind of desire that I never really got training again, like going back to school, right? So I wanted to expand my horizons. I didn't, it's just the way I'm wired. Like I never liked the idea that I can only do one thing. So even though comic books was my dream at that time, but I also knew that there was other fields and other things like, you know, the animation, there's other things out there, but I would not be able to work there because I had no other skills beyond my comic book, you know, you're drawing with a pencil. So I wanted some formal training. So I actually went and applied to Art Center College of Design, and I started going there. I took a hiatus from my career, and I went and studied illustration in Pasadena at Art Center College of Design. And that's where I learned the foundations of art, color, design, composition, and all the different mediums from oil to acrylic, watercolor, charcoal, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, from there, and then right before I graduated, I got pulled back into the comic book industry by Mark Silvestri, Matt Hawkins, Top Cow, the other branch of Image Comic Books, to work on a Tomb Raider comic book series. And it was one of those like offers at that time that like you couldn't refuse, because there's never been a Tomb Raider comic book at that time. And obviously that video game is a huge franchise. So yeah, I worked on Tomb Raider from issues 1 through 20. I eventually did some work for Marvel, and I did some Uncanny X-Men, worked for Excalibur. And then around that time, that's when like the internet was really like blown up at that time. And so I'm really being exposed to what's out there, and concept art became a big thing. So I'm seeing artists like Justin Sweet, and I would see, wow, they're like combining all the things that I love, like painting. At that point now I love painting, but in comic books, I'm only drawing with a pencil. So and as I'm drawing Tomb Raider and X-Men, I'm not touching paint again. I'm not painting. So I missed that. So concept art really just kind of fed my desire to like, that's something I think I really want to do. But again, I knew I had to build a portfolio, because I knew I couldn't get a job in concept art if I didn't, I couldn't get a job in concept art by just showing my Tomb Raider work, you know, because that only shows I know how to draw in a style. But in video games and film, I know you need to paint realistically and show that you know how to paint, and use digital medium like Photoshop and Painter and all that stuff. So again, as I'm doing comic books, I'm building a portfolio again. And then from there, I landed a job at Sony Santa Monica to work on the God of War series.
And you were on that series for quite a while, weren't you?
Yeah, I was there for 5 years, from 2005 to 2010. God of War 2, God of War 3, God of War Chains of Olympus, and God of War Ascension, the beginning part of that.
When you were working on a series like that, I mean, that series is so juicy with fun lore, and it has such a great world to expand on. But after doing 4 or 5 games in God of War, did you still feel excited about the subject matter? Were you itching to do different subject matter? Kind of what kept you going for that long on God of War?
Well, God of War was an amazing time. You know, the whole team, led by Charlie Wen, and then that was really my training camp, essentially. Because even though like Art Center was great, but I didn't learn like digital painting over there. It was all just foundational, traditional mediums. And then I'm learning on the side on my own the digital medium. But working on God of War was, you know, just great, because I got to like really grow as an artist and learning digital medium, how to design characters, how to design creatures. It's such a creative, fun game if you're familiar with it. But yeah, I think after 5 years of drawing Greek creatures, Greek characters, it was really challenging creatively eventually, you know, because especially when it comes to Greek material, that was a challenge with God of War. They always wanted to, if we ventured into a little bit too designy, it would become fantasy and look too Lord of the Rings. Or if we went a little bit, if we elaborated on the Greek kind of signature looks, it starts looking Roman, right? Mm. But so the Greek style is just very simplistic, you know. So and there's not that much like reference as much as like, you know, Roman, you know, they get more elaborate. So yeah, I did start getting like, oh my gosh, there's only so many togas and horns, and I need to like expand. You know, as an artist, I think for anything, like we need variety, right? So
Well, and then
5 years on that.
and then speaking of variety, the last decade, then you went to Avengers, right? Where you got a whole variety of superheroes.
A universe full.
A universe full of superheroes.
Well, that's why 10 years in, there's no sense of like, you know, being like tired or being like worn out, or it's not the same thing. Even though, you know, there's some people like, oh, it's all superhero, but you know, every single film is different, you know, like I get to work on, you know, an Avengers film or like a Black Widow film, and then you get to work on Guardians of the Galaxy, and then you get to work on Thor Ragnarok with a director like Taika Waititi, and then work on Shang-Chi. Like there's so much variety. It's like you can never get bored.
So tell us a little bit about what a day in the life of Andy Park is like now on a show like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna talk pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
Not so much me working at home. Yeah, especially once I became a leader, once I started leading the films, things got really, really challenging, because for the first 5 years working there, I was, you know, a senior illustrator, senior concept artist. So on a day-to-day basis, my day-to-day is just painting. I'm painting, designing characters, doing keyframes. But once I became a leader 5 years ago, I'm still doing painting. I'm illustrating characters, coming up with design options for whatever character we're trying to solve, or I'm doing a keyframe, you know, illustrating a singular moment in a movie to help inspire the production. I'm trying to do that, but the other part of my job is I'm directing. So I'm directing the artists that I'll hire, or there's just a lot of there's a bunch of in-house artists that we have, and I have to go and oversee what they're doing. We'll have discussions, make some notes, that kind of thing. Or I'll have a meeting with a director or a producer as they, because they're constantly writing and rewriting. So things are constantly evolving and changing. So we might be working on, one storyline or a character, and then things change and we're like, oh, that idea that we had is no longer in play. So there's a lot of those kind of meetings. And then, I will have some artists that are remote. So then I'll have to go and do conference calls with them, or emails. So it's a lot of organizational stuff as well as, but then I'm still trying to do the art. So it gets really, really challenging.
You had mentioned Taika Waititi, who you worked with on Thor Ragnarok, that he was the director. What was it like working with him, and what's it like at that level, collaborating with a director?
Yeah, that's some of the most fun, the fun stuff that I get to experience at Marvel. But because every single director is different, right? And then you have a guy like Taika, and if you know him, if you've seen his interviews, he's like a character. So he's constantly entertaining and joking. Sometimes it's kind of like you have to, in your head, you're like, wait, is he just making a joke, or is that real direction? And usually,
is he serious?
Yeah. But usually, you discover it's actually real direction. So yeah, but yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome because you get to talk to him, figure out what their sensibilities are. On Thor Ragnarok, he was fully. Some directors, they're not fully either versed in the comic book world, so they might think they wanted things to be a little bit more grounded. And someone like Taika, who is more versed, he's like, I want Jack Kirby, I want it to look like the comic book. So, I definitely appreciated that. As I'm designing a character like Hela, that's one character where it's like, it looks great from the original Jack Kirby design with the, the horns, the antlers, all that kind of stuff. But you're like, how do you do that in live action? So, I remember one of my solutions was just put it in the back, because how do you put it on the head and turn the head, right? So you put it on the back, but he was like, no, I want it out of the head, just like Jack Kirby, and I want it 6 feet long. And you're like, as a concept designer, my job for film is to bring it into a reality, right? To design things that can actually work. And that was one where I was like, how the heck are they going to make that work? But okay, I'm being directed to do that, and I appreciate it, but I'll leave that to the VFX guys.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you went from being an artist to being, this director level and overseeing other artists, what were some of the challenges that you faced starting to run the team?
Well, as I mentioned, one of the biggest challenges was time management, because they still expect like someone in my position to produce as much artwork as I was when I was only doing that. So it's like, I'm working after hours, I'll like come home and I'll see my kids, and when they'll go to sleep, and then I'm still working, or I'll work on the weekends. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges. The other challenge is, I don't really see it as a challenge, because the fun part for me is working with the other artists. I get to work with so many amazing artists, and that I get to, it's like a pleasure, because everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, right? So I really get to play with that and dole out like assignments, and then work with them throughout the week to get it to a point where I know it will be presentable to the director, to the producers. And then every other week, or sometimes even weekly, we'll have a big meeting. So I'll bring all the artwork that myself and all the other artists have done, and then we'll go into a conference room, and the conference room is filled with 20 different people, from the directors to the producers to Kevin Feige to the leadership, to all the other heads of all the other departments. And I'm presenting the artwork, and they're free to say whatever they want. They can make fun of it, they can ooh and ah at it if they like, they can make comments, and it's very nerve-wracking, because it's like, you're just like, as an artist, you're like naked. Here's my, here's all the work and all the hours and all the, effort that we put in. And a lot of times I'm flipping through the images, and sometimes there's silence, and then as you flip to the next one, you're like, I just spent like 3 days on that, and they saw it for 2 seconds, and you flip to the next one. But that's our job as concept artists, it's to help them find their voice, their vision. So it's not like it's a gallery. We're not at a gallery show.
Yeah. Well, we are almost out of time, but I really want to ask you this before you go. I've heard you very famously say, I know how good I am, but I also know how good I'm not. And can you talk a little bit about the self-awareness and the dichotomy between confidence and insecurity, as I've heard you mention before?
Yeah, I think every artist, and I talk to a lot of young artists and even my peers, we all struggle with insecurities. And then some people, that you'll even either know or heard of, like is definitely more confident, or you yourself might be more confident. But I always see confidence, insecurity, it's two sides of a coin, right? And some people show more of the confident side, some people show more of the insecure side, but it's pretty much, it's all in the same, vein. For me, I always feel like as an artist, you want to have a good balance. If you're too much on one side, whether you're overly confident, then that's not going to serve you well, because then usually the tendency will be you're not going to pursue on getting better because you're not humble. And then if you're too insecure, then that can also stifle you from kind of making moves forward and being bold. So for me, I always say, I know how good I am, but I also know how good I'm not. And I've always felt that way, where there's a level where I know I have a certain amount of skill and that's really served me well, but I also know that, man, there's so many other people that are so much better than me at this particular thing or this particular other thing. So it's the thing that keeps me moving forward. So even after 25 years of working as a professional artist, I'm still hungry. I'm still, always kind of struggling with the battle, the inner battle that we have of insecurity. Some days you'll feel a little bit more low about yourself than other days, and other days you'll feel a little bit like you'll feel good about yourself. But I always try to keep that balance of like, okay, don't get too down on myself. I think it's more that I don't think I really struggle with like, don't get too high on myself. I don't struggle with that, because it's more the I struggle with like getting too low on myself. So always trying to find that balance, always continually trying to improve and trying to stay humble. I think that's served me well throughout my career.
Amazing.
Well, those are really great words to leave our chat here with. Andy, thank you so much for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule to spend a little bit here with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And I see so many of you in the chat saying, where can we get more Andy? Andy Park Art on Instagram, ArtStation, anywhere else that people can find you?
On YouTube, yeah, Twitter, ArtStation, Instagram, Andy Park Art.
Awesome.
Awesome, Andy. Thanks so much. You have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Chat, would you please give it up for Andy Park? Thank you all so much for being so lively during the conversations. Thank you for your positivity. I see a bunch of people in there answering each other's questions, which is super cool. Thank you, chat. Thank you for going with us. Keep bringing it. We're gonna be doing this. What do we got next, Max?
We got Leah Augustine, who's an environment artist on Apex Legends, and I'm excited to dive in and see what that's all about.
Yeah, me too. We've got after that we've got Sparth, legendary art director of the Halo franchise, and then we've got a very special piece from David Levy on Scout One coming up. Also, we've got our summer bundle sale going on right now, so you can get buy 2 kits, get the 3rd one free, or buy 3 kits and get 3 more free. That's all at kitbash3d.com. We'll be right back with Leah Augustine after this.
Hi, my name is Ash Thorpe, and I'm a director and a designer, and I've been working on feature films and AAA games such as Prometheus, Ghost in the Shell, Blade Runner, Total Recall.
Hey, I'm Alex Alvarez. I'm the founder of Gnomon, and I've also been a creature artist on movies like Avatar and Prometheus and Super 8.
Hi, my name is James Pack. I'm a concept designer in the entertainment industry, and I've been a part of Titanfall, Call of Duty, and Transformers.
Concept art is really the process of taking a script or words, which, film, games all start with, and visualizing that to communicate to an audience.
So we're literally their hand that brings this world to life.
Taking abstract words, ideas, and then turning them into visuals. Because my goal is ultimately to take what's inside their mind and then give it to everybody.
There are a couple of breakdowns of concept designers. There are your character designers, there are your environment designers, which are also called world builders, and there's a third section which is mostly props, vehicles, and weapons.
Concept artists ultimately are the sort of initial tool that a director or a studio can use to figure out what is the visual look of the project.
Whether you're working for video games or film, you're working for people. And when you're working for people, everyone has a different way to communicate and has a different way to develop their ideas. You sort of need to understand what they know, what they don't know, where your specialties and expertise can kind of come into play and help fill in the gaps. Concept design is not going to be going anywhere. In actuality, it's going to be growing more and more and more.
Anybody can do it with passion.
All right, we are back. Welcome everybody to Game Day. We are Kitbasch3d coming to you live from Los Angeles, California as part of the Lightbox Expo.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about this guest. You know, we've been really covering a wide range of video games today, and we haven't really touched on environments. You know, that's what we kind of specialize on in Kitbash, but we haven't really gotten too much to chat with an actual environment artist on a AAA game.
And you mentioned Kitbash really briefly. Can you just explain to the audience, for some people who don't know, what is Kitbash3d?
Sure. If you're just tuning in and you don't know of Kitbash3d, we create 3D assets. So you can think of them like the Lego blocks of your digital worlds. Yeah, and if you've never tried it before, we have a free kit up on the store right now and a contest going. So you can go to kitbash3d.com, grab a free kit, join the contest.
Yeah, so if you're trying to make art like this, we make these buildings and stuff. And speaking of a free kit, courtesy of our next guest, we have a free kit available to the first 30 people who grab it. The code is Leah Free, and you can get the Victorian kit off of kitbash3d.com. So on that note, and many thanks to Leah for this, please welcome Leah Augustine.
Hi.
Hello, Leah.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Yeah, this has been so fun, and we are tremendously excited to have you here, as we know everyone in the chat is too. Chat, would you please give a warm welcome? If you're out there, let us know. So Leah, where are you coming to us from?
Pasadena.
Nice. Nice. And so Leah, you are an environment artist at Respawn Entertainment. Currently, you're working on Apex Legends, yeah?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
I know that a lot of Apex Legends is under wraps, so we won't dive in too much into specifically about that process. And today you're going to talk to us about how you do a lot of environment work for your personal side of things too, right?
But before we dive into that, can you explain for anyone who's in the chat who doesn't know what that actual job means? Because it could be misleading, but can you tell us what an environment artist is? What's your role on a video game, and how does that day-to-day work?
Sure. I mean, the general broad term is we make environments for games. And then what that more specifically means in a game environment is that we work really closely with level designers to flesh out the look and the art of what goes into like an environment. Basically everything you see on screen that's not maybe the character or VFX is probably done by an environment artist. And we work very closely with a concept artist to really like make out props, buildings, terrain, materials, all kinds of stuff to really like give life to a game and what you see on the screen.
Now, how much overlap is there between actually like the level design of designing what the player is going to do and the actual visual style? Where's that kind of handoff happen?
I think that really is dependent on like studio, but for like in general, I think usually level designers work with like blockouts, so like basic shapes, cubes, primitive objects like that. And then environment artists come in and like actually flesh out what those cubes are. Like it's a building and what does that building look like and that type of stuff.
Gotcha. And it sounds like this role is very much a generalist role, like having to have a good understanding of modeling and texturing and lighting. What's kind of the broad skill set behind this?
I think it's really important to have a foundation in 3D modeling, both like organic and hard surface stuff, as well as understanding materials, textures, and it's always helpful to understand lighting as well. Usually at most studios, lighting is handled by a different artist and not necessarily an environment artist though. And also for some studios, I think you can get really specialized, like only focus on materials or only focus on modeling. Specifically at Respawn, we kind of do general broad stuff where our environment artists kind of owned a lot. When they'll get like a section and they kind of own everything in there from modeling to texturing.
Gotcha. So when you say own everything, and when you get, let's say, a level design block out that has just primitives and cubes and stuff like that, so it's really just designing how the player is going to move around a space. That comes to you. Well, what do you do from there?
From there, we usually work in block out. So we'll start fleshing out just like really rough general idea of what's happening. Usually also sometimes concept will come in and give us like a painting or something to work off of. And then from there, it's just like an iterative process back and forth between both level design, concept, and environment art to kind of figure it out. And we also play test quite a lot to make sure the stuff that we're putting in doesn't impede with gameplay as well, like cause like weird issues for the player, like they don't understand where they're going, that type of stuff.
Huh. You know, I remember I had a brief stint as a game tester straight out of high school. And I remember playing my first like early build of a Call of Duty game. And all of us testers got lost in this one area and none of us could figure out where to go. And then I remember when the game came out, they just added a light above the door. And that's all it needed. It was just like, oh, light, oh, that's where the door is. And none of us could see the door just because it was blending in. How much of that stuff in testing are you guys iterating on? Are you trying to figure out design-wise, how are you going to, relight this stuff or change maybe the textures or colors? How do you iterate on that to solve those things?
I think often a lot of that stuff gets caught by our designers like almost immediately because we do a lot of check-ins as well, and they have a lot of visibility on what we do. And then if not, usually it comes in feedback from either other environment artists or like testers, QA. And from there, we have a discussion of what's the easy solution or what's the best solution. Sometimes it is something just as simple as like putting a light here or changing a color. But sometimes it might involve a little bit more rework of the space to kind of make it more readable.
Gotcha. Let's take a step back and I want to know when you made the decision to work in games. Did you always want to work in games or did you kind of stumble upon it?
For me, I kind of stumble upon it. I initially went to school actually for photography because I just love photography. And while in school, I kind of realized that wasn't the best fit for me. I didn't like it as like a job necessarily. So then I actually shifted and got into animation, and I wanted to work in animated film. And more specifically, I wanted to do like set dressing and modeling and kind of basically environment art, but for film. And it wasn't until I think maybe 2013 where I played a lot of really good games that came out that year, like Last of Us, BioShock Infinite, Tomb Raider, GTA. And for some reason, that kind of made things click in my head that maybe video games is what I wanted to do. And so I started looking more into that. And then it wasn't until literally, I think the last month before I graduated from college that I realized that I wanted to do environment art and not animation. And so I shifted gears and then started pursuing that instead.
Gotcha. And after college, was Respawn the first studio?
No, I actually worked at Hi-Res Studios, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, for about a year or so before moving over to Respawn.
Gotcha. And can you talk about what you were doing at Hi-Res?
Yeah, I was actually an environment artist there as well, and I was working on a game called Rogue Company. And yeah, I was there for a year and worked on a couple maps, a couple materials, things like that before moving over.
Amazing. And how do you like your job at Respawn now? How is it working with that team?
I love our team at Respawn. I think our environment team and art team specifically are like really close, and everyone there's just really good at what they do.
Ali from the chat asks, how is working collaboratively from home been for you? You're talking about this process being, so many different departments that come together to build this. What's it like now when everyone's separated?
There's been like hiccups for like the initial setup, but honestly, I feel like we've been doing pretty well, almost the same as when we were back in the actual studio. We have a lot of Zoom calls, and we actually have like an all-day Zoom call for the entire environment art team where we just kind of hang out and talk, almost like a Discord server. And people pop in and out if they have questions or need feedback on anything, and that's been really nice and helpful.
Jordan Levy in the chat asked, did you get to work on Titanfall?
I didn't, unfortunately. I really love Titanfall too, but I came after.
Yeah. We've got James Pack on the show tomorrow who also worked on Titanfall. Be sure you check that one out. Leo, we want to talk just a little bit about getting into the industry. And, what advice do you have for younger artists who are trying to get in now? It's, let's talk first pre-coronavirus, what getting into a studio, and then maybe we can talk about specifically for this year. But what advice for in the normal world, pre-apocalypse, do you have? What advice would you give to younger people?
I definitely think if you're trying to be an artist, like really focus on your portfolio. And I think we're really lucky now that there's so many resources online for free too, as well as paid stuff. But I think there's tons of tutorials, tons of resources, tons of interviews and talks. There's like online courses that you could take, like CGMA or Gnomon, that I think would be really helpful. And I think just really like looking at what an environment artist does, if that's what you want to do, and really try to like learn about that process and like learn how to make 3D assets, learn how to make an environment, maybe pick up something like Unreal, and like build out scenes like that and just build a portfolio. And I think if you keep at that, eventually you'll find something.
And Pixie no Baka in the chat says, why only younger people? Thank you for correcting me. I don't necessarily mean younger people. I mean people less established than Leah. Thank you.
Younger in experience.
Yes. Thank you.
Speaking of resources out there, that's something that you've been doing more and more of, is creating these amazing tutorials on 80 level and building these scenes and really showing step by step how to do this. Why is that important to you? Why are you putting those together?
For me, I really like making environments. So I love working on personal work. And I tend to like work on a lot of stuff all the time anyways, even if I don't put it out publicly. And I, as a student, definitely really relied on places like 80 level to like, I like read so many 80 level articles when I was in school to try to learn as much as possible. And so when I was approached to write that article, I wanted to make it as detailed as possible and point to as many resources and videos as possible, just so if any student or anyone out there was reading that and they wanted to learn more, they knew exactly where, or like they could figure it out and get more resources and jumping off points to kind of learn more on their own. I just think it's important. And yeah, it meant a lot for me when I was in school.
That's amazing, the idea of giving back. And if in the chat right now on Twitch, if you're seeing these images on the screen, this is this winter landscape environment that Leah did a full breakdown of on 80 level. And you can find that on her art station as well. We got a couple questions in the chat. Would you say that having experience in photography has helped you with your environment work? From Imagine Kajus.
I definitely think so. I think environment art relies a lot on like composition, lighting, like storytelling. So I definitely think having a background in photography helped me with environment art, especially doing personal work and taking shots for it as well. Yeah, I definitely think film and photography are both really important resources and mediums for environment artists to look at as well, to kind of help themselves.
And Brushfire in the chat asks, how competitive is it to break into the industry as an environment artist?
It's fairly competitive. I think most positions in the industry is competitive. I think environment art is in a good place because a lot of games are getting bigger and bigger, and therefore environments are getting bigger and bigger. And there's a lot of jobs within environment artists, like modeling, like materials, lighting, if you want to go that route as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, but I definitely think you still need to like make sure you stand out, make sure you have a solid portfolio.
I think that's such a good point, that this whole space, literally and figuratively, is exploding. The games, as you say, are getting bigger, and the demand for artists to be able to create virtual environments is exploding, would you say?
Yeah, I agree.
So several questions in the chat. How much time do you spend in your spare time working on personal work?
I try to devote at least a couple hours a week, but I also do think it is important for everyone to have like work-life balance and also take time for yourself. So I'll work on stuff when I feel inspired and driven to do so, but I'm not going to force myself to do it, if that makes sense. So I do spend usually a couple hours on the weekend for sure, and a couple hours during the week as well. So maybe like 5 to 6 hours per week. But it's definitely fallen off, I think. Working from home, I think, has definitely put a hamper in my motivation, because I think I want to get up from the computer. But
yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, about just 2020 in general. How has that changed your day-to-day from beforehand?
I definitely think it's kept it somewhat similar. I think I have a lot more. My issue personally is that I'm the type of person that when I'm working, I won't get up. And so working from home, I think I'm more prone to just sitting there and just working for like 8 hours straight without standing up. Well, maybe at like a studio environment, I would get up more to go get coffee or do something like that. So I think that's kind of changed. And I think in general, for a lot of people I know, that's also been a similar issue where they tend to work a little bit longer than they're used to without taking breaks. So I do think it's really important to like be mindful of that and like take a lunch break, go out, get up and get coffee, go for a walk if you can, that type of stuff.
I think that's a really good point, that we've actually heard a lot of artists who work from home normally have talked about how important it is to set that schedule, because doing the artwork for a movie or a game is often the thing that you want to be doing much more than you want to go take a break, even if that break is lunch sometimes. Setting a clock or setting a schedule to remind yourself to stay hydrated and to make sure that you're looking at things far away, I think are really good, important tips. There was a question in the chat, how much substance designer material versus it skipped away, lost it, versus actual environment mock-ups? What's
for your starting portfolio?
Yeah.
So Trebelicious says, as a starting portfolio, how much substance designer materials versus actual environment mock-ups should you be working on both? What's a good ratio between them?
I think it's good to have designer. I think a lot of studios will look at that. So I would say if you could make an environment purely using designer materials that you craft yourself, that's great. But I do also think there's nothing wrong with taking materials, say, from like Megascans, as I know that's also free with Unreal now, and incorporating that into your scene, as long as you're like transparent about that and not try to like pass that off as your own. So I would say aim for mostly designer if you can.
I love it, Leah. We could talk to you for a while, and I know the chat's got so many more questions that, but we are out of time here. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule and your weekend time off to join us here and to answer some questions from us as well as the chat. It's been a true pleasure getting to hang with you.
Well, thank you.
Everyone in the chat, please let Leah know that you're out there and listening, and send her some gratitude too. We'll catch you soon, Leah. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Guys, if you want to see more of Leah's work, you can follow her. ArtStation has a bunch of not just her amazing images, but those 80-level breakdowns, and they're really thorough and amazing step-by-steps of how she builds these environments. So definitely check that out. That's Leah Augustine.
You all in the chat, huge gratitude to you guys. Thank you for your energy and your positivity. Jordan Levy had asked a question about when James Pack of Titanfall is coming on. That's tomorrow at 11:45 in the Future of Education panel. So be sure you check that one out. Now, we are tremendously excited. We've got Sparth coming up, a hero of both of ours, legendary art director of the entire Halo franchise. Don't go anywhere. And right after that, we got David Levy. And we also have a contest going on right now. If you go to kitbasch3d.com, you can get the Neo City kit for free. And there, once you build something with it, post your work using the hashtag KB3D contest. This is another contest from us. We've had a participation of artists in over 100 countries in these in the past. But what's really special about this one is many of the artists on game day will be the judges, some of whom will even be giving paint overs and portfolio reviews as prizes. Don't miss this. The contest just kicked off. Get after it. Yes, it is only for the Neo City kit. You can use other kits, but you got to use Neo City within it.
Then trivia.
Trivia.
We've got a trivia question before we come back with Sparth. So we all know the cultural phenomenon Pokemon, but the word Pokemon is generally understood to be a translation of which phrase? So post your answers in the chat. First three are going to win some free kits.
We'll see y'all in a second with Sparth.
Hey everybody. Have you ever wondered how they make all that amazing art for video games, movies, and television? Today, we're going to explore the world of 3D art. Let's get started. We have our existing scene here that we've already painted. These guys are hot, they've had a hard day, and they need some shade. So the one thing missing from this scene is a building to cast some shadow on these guys. So let's go over to our 3D program, and we're going to get a kit from Kitbasch3d, all these wonderful buildings. This kit in particular is called the Warzone kit. Look at all this fabulous detail. Look at this. Someone went in and modeled all this stuff right here so you don't have to at home. You just got to buy the kit and then get out and start playing. And I think this guy right here is probably my favorite. Look at all that detail. So I'm going to get this building and bring that into my other scene. There we go. We're going to call it friend.obj, because who doesn't need a friend? I know I do. I'm going to place the building just like I want it. What we're going to do next is we're going to take this building into another application and light it and texture it. And that's where the real fun happens. Get ready.
I gotta be honest, I am so excited about what's about to happen.
Let's answer the trivia question and then let's just jump into this whole thing because I don't want to waste any time.
Okay.
Actually, I don't even know the answer.
All right, so we're excited over here, folks. The question was, we all know the cultural phenomenon Pokemon, but the word Pokemon is generally understood to be a translation of which phrase? And the answer, as you all got super quick, pocket monsters. The hints team will be reaching out to you if you're one of the first three to grab that. The other thing I wanted to say is, courtesy of our next guest, we have a coupon code for 50% off your entire bundle. There are only 15 of those codes left, or there are only 15 of those codes. So get them while they're hot. Whatever you put in your cart, you'll get 50% off if you use the code SPARTH50. That is in appreciation to our very next guest, which I am so excited to introduce to you. We have been wanting to have this gentleman on the show with us since we started doing this show in 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, please in the chat give a very warm welcome to Sparth.
How you doing?
Hi. Doing great.
I'm gonna try to not fanboy out this whole time.
Me too.
But if for those of you, actually, I don't think you need any introduction. But for those of you who happen to be living under a rock, Sparth is the art director of Halo, one of my favorite franchises of all time. But before we dive into Halo, I want to go way back, and I want to talk about when I first saw your work in the old days of concept art forums there was kind of this group of artists who started doing some wild work, and speed painting started coming around with all these crazy Photoshop brushes. And it was like, I always equate it to like the Impressionist movement. It was like a new movement in concept art, and with these names like Sparth and Vile. Can you talk to us about what that beginning was, what that era was, and what you were doing?
So, I mean, obviously, this all came from the Sijun days, what we call the Sijun days, which was one of the very first, online forums, and it really just like originated into Sijun, to be honest. For some people, it was different, other forms, but this one was kind of really central when it comes to what the speed painting thing was. Speed painting was just that term that was just like rapidly, if I might say, put together as an intent. It's true that with David Levy, Val, we were just like part of that group, as well as Baron Thierry, and obviously the very inspiration god himself, Craig Mullins, was there to be inspiring, a bunch of weirdos that we were, and it's true that with time, you could really just see a bit of that fast-paced thing going on, where in a very impressionist, in a very kind of half abstract type of way, people started painting faster and trying to see, not for the sake of just like finishing everything in 30 minutes. It's just like a bit of a fad, but at the same time, it teaches you so many things when it comes to going straight to the point, being able to just like have an analytical brain that allows you to just like select what you're going to be, what is going to be your next brushstroke. And it's vital when it comes to the production artists that we all are, whether it be in 3D, in 2D. You have to make fast choices. You need to be taking fast decisions. And after months and years, your brain becomes better at that. And your brain is able to synthesize exactly what you want to be putting on a canvas, no matter the medium and no matter the app.
Yeah, speaking of medium, I think one of the things that whole movement did, and seeing your artwork was so pivotal here, is I think before that, people were trying to hide the fact that they were painting digitally. And I think a lot of what you were doing back then was embracing the digital medium and saying, this is a different medium, this has a different look and a different feel, and there's something really special about this.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what that was like, and how did you come up with basically your process for that?
Okay, so, and I mean, we have a little bit of time, but it's true that it's a bit of a long story, and I'll go short because, again, it is a fact that internet as a thing, as an insane communication process, allowed us to go way faster. And there's no secret that the whole speed painting and digital thing happened at the same time that internet happened. Before internet, in a pre-internet era, when you look at artists, I think we were way slower into gaining new knowledge, into knowing new artists. Everything was snail-paced, if I might say. And when in 1997, around there, when everything started to really ramp up on that hyper communication that we all have, that is now a given. It's now a normal for everybody. But back in the days, it was not. And it's true that suddenly everything went faster. So there's not a lot of secret as to why everything happened at that time when it comes to the whole speed painting thing. It happened because of internet as a way of communication. It's the same thing. Prior to that, we were slow. We were needing a lot of time to be able to investigate. Let me tell you just one small detail that is funny. Before Halo, you had Marathon, and Bungie was working on Marathon. You had 2 games of Marathon, I think. You had Durandal and another one. And it was around like 1993, 1994. The first, and I remember that I had the jacket of the game. That's 1994. And I look in the jacket, and it was fascinating because I could spot that there were paintings done by Craig Mullins. And you could not even put a name on what it was. What I mean by this is that I was looking at these paintings and I was like, obviously, there is something in there that I'm just not understanding. And it was because that medium, that texture, that non-texture was digital. That's in 1994, and it's just kind of fascinating because at that time you could not even put a name on it, and you had no ways of communication to teach you as to what it was. It was like the birth of digital art in the way that Craig was pushing all that stuff as soon as 1989. And so this is fascinating to me because after that, it just went straight up, and the ramping up just went like a plane taking off and never landing. That's what happened. That's what happened with speed painting and digital painting. I remember around because I was late to the game, to be honest. I was an artist for quite a few years. My first published artwork was in 1994, a scientific cover. And I was using pencil, paper, and colored pencils. That's in 1990, and I was 18 or 19. After that, I bought tablets, like one after the other. As soon as 1995, I had a tablet, and I was like, this is crap. I can't use that. It's just really just not good. The thing that made me do the full switch is when I left behind me the traditional methods of sketching, and when I fully embraced digital art as a thing, as a new medium. Before that, I was taking my pen sketches, and I was trying to scan it, color it, and try to see if it could just blend in the best way, and it was a failure all the time. When I left all that stuff behind, and I said, now the canvas is your new free space, and you're going to have to do everything within that canvas from A to Z. Then it exploded. I liberated the mental blockings I had, and I managed to tell myself, that is your space of freedom. You go full digital, and this is where it's going to start. And as soon as I did that, my progress went straight up like I could not believe it.
Huh. I want to talk about that you built quite a career and reputation. People have seen your work and your consistency of putting out great work. But then you joined the Halo team, and it was kind of one of those things that I think everyone was kind of in shock when that happened. What was that decision for you, and what was it like to join 343?
It's interesting. At first, to be honest, when in 2008 I was living in Texas, I was working with Kenneth Scott, and we were working on Rage, the game Rage that was released quite a few years afterwards. It was released in 2011, but I left around 2008, and I was kind of really fed up of living in Texas. I was exhausted. I was just not in my shoes, and I said, I'm gonna go back to France for a while. And at first, when Microsoft contacted me through Kenneth Scott, that was actually already on the franchise, I was like, I don't think I'm really interested. But they convinced me, and at one point, I just visited them in Seattle, and I said, this is an awesome place. It's an awesome, early project that was the very early phases of Halo 4. And I told myself, let's just go. And this was around 2008, end of 2008. And since then, I've been part of 343.
It's so cool. I would love to hear a bit about what a day in the life is like for you. We all know the projects, we all know the work, but what is it like for you from the time you get up till the time you stop working? Do you have a strict morning routine that you do before work? And what point are you diving in?
Are you talking, Banks, about the new life we have or the previous life we have?
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was my follow-up question. But can we first talk about the legacy of this before the apocalypse, and then we could talk about 2020 after that.
So for quite a few years, the first phases of my participation and contribution to Halo was being a senior concept artist. Super fast, I became a lead concept artist, and I was taking care of everything concept related for Halo. And obviously, each Halo is different. Halo 4 was the mandate of Halo 4. It was not the mandate of Halo 5. It's not the mandate of Halo Infinite. Each game is different, and we have to adapt to a franchise that is evolving, but that needs to be grounded back into legacy when it comes to Halo Infinite, for example. And this is one of the things that I've been making sure it happens. But Halo 4, for example, was a very different project, to be honest. Halo 4 was you have to renew Halo, and you need to just, you know, be crazy and spearheading something kind of different, you know. And so every time there's these requests that are just like ever changing when it comes to the mandates. Now, to go back to my job, and my daily job at that time was like to literally, first of all, not be very health oriented, which is I was not working out, I was not doing a lot of sport at all, and I was just like basically my chair to work was my best friend, and I would have my butt on it like many hours a day. That has changed now, and obviously I am working out now, and I'm in a better phase and place when it comes to how much I need to think about health. But at that time, I was just like not really caring much. I was working my ass off when it comes to concept. Obviously, we had through the years many amazing concept artists that as a lead concept artist, I was suggesting things, I was giving feedback. My daily job was to basically try to have a ratio between my personal production and contribution to Halo and to each game. But at the same time, I was giving a lot of feedback and making sure that we would all be like moving forward in the same direction. The thing I need a small note when it comes to a franchise like this. I've never considered that a specific, very specific type of art needed to just always be funneled through a franchise. For example, if I think the best way to put it is that as a concept artist, I made sure that each concept, whether they'd be line art, whether it'd be digital, at one point we had Paul Richard that actually came and worked on the franchise for quite a few years. He was still sketching on paper, and everything was fine with me. What I mean is that each artist comes with a different technique and a different luggage, and I was making sure, and my job was making sure that everything would be having the Halo spirit and it needed to just be on par with the demand. But at the same time, I was just not really minding if it was black or white or color or anything. And that was what made all the contribution and participation through the years so exciting, because thinking outside of the box is that. It's also making sure that we have 8, 10 artists, concept artists, and they all come with different techniques and different styles. We make sure that it's going to be fully embedded into the needs we have, but at the same time, they keep their own personality. And I've always been very interested into that. To go back to the personal day pace, obviously different today, but it is a fact that since 2014 approximately, as an art director, my job is different. My contribution on the production side is not truly the same. And I've been still sketching and painting through the years. Less now, because obviously, as you may expect, the schedules we have and the very meeting-oriented days we have are not allowing me to just like sketch as much as I would want and paint as much as I would want. But it's still nonetheless exciting, and I'm always saying I have the energy and the punch to continue even after 11 years on a franchise that is just like so vital and important, and I'm fine with that.
I want to touch on this. You talk about the Halo spirit. I think out of anyone, the person who I really want to know what does the Halo spirit mean is from you. How do you define Halo as a visual style? How do you define the Halo spirit?
Military-oriented science fiction shooter where the military nature prevails, and in which it's still embedded into a very space opera-oriented storytelling experience, and that is really vital. Now, I could jump on the MP side and see how much this is vital when it comes to the perfection of the gameplay style. I'm not a game designer, so I don't want to jump into things where you have other experts that are going to be a better job at describing this. But the spirit and the intertwined visuals of Halo is very specific. Yes, I think it is. It is a very when you look at Halo, in a bit like you'd have the inspiration into Larry Niven's Ringworld or even Starship Troopers as a movie, it is a very American-centric. It's funny that I'm saying this being French, but I lived in the U.S. for quite some years, even when I was a kid. And so I've been kind of a bit of that weird French American dude, like hopping from one country to the next. But it's true that Halo is a very American-centric franchise in a lot of ways. When I say American, from a science fiction standpoint, it is a space opera oriented franchise in the same way that Star Wars is when it comes to movies. It is having the same foundations, the foundations of a huge universe that is expandable and in which a lot of things can happen. You have drama, you have a lot of things, you have connections, you have Master Chief and Cortana, you have a lot of things going on that make these story experiences be something that are vital. I mean, put that back into the legacy of Halo when it comes to the hundreds of thousands of players that do remember and the moments of everything going on storytelling-wise. It is way more than a shooter. It's been, as Star Wars to a movie, it's been the same for games when it comes to Halo, and it's something that is also very complex, as you may guess, because people have very fond memories. They are very sometimes strict about what Halo needs to be and what it needs to represent. That's the whole Pandora box of discussions we could have, and it is very complicated, obviously. But I'm always wanting to believe that it's been a bit of a labor of focus and love when it comes to how much we can contribute to something that will be in the future legacy-oriented and connected to the history of that franchise. And I'm making sure that it is.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And talking about just those moments that are ingrained in people's minds, I can think of more than a dozen just iconic moments of Halo storytelling that really stuck with you, but also moments of just visual awe-inspiring moments of seeing these vast new worlds and these new landscapes. There's a question in the chat, and actually it was going to be my next question, but Diego Hope asks, in Halo, you always see an evolution in design, and it's great to see that in a big franchise. What is that like when you're trying to push the envelope? You have a big franchise, you have millions of players who have such an invested feeling on this franchise. What's the creative process when you're trying to evolve it, but you also want to keep that spirit of Halo alive?
I think that, it's very interesting. What happens is that from a direction standpoint, a lot of franchises either don't listen to their fans or they listen to their fans. I think that it took us quite a few years as a studio at 343 to understand what it meant to really truly listen to fans in a way that is just not going to be either toxic or stressful or aggressive, but where it's going to be constructive. And constructive fan feedback is something that the studio has been putting together for quite a few years. And I think we became really good at that to make sure that we're going to be moving that franchise in the right direction. Obviously, I can't say much about either the structure or Halo itself because, it is something that I'm not allowed to really talk about. But when it comes to the history of it, this is still something that there's a lot to say about it. The funny, interesting detail is that I really come from the marathon days, and marathon for me, Halo was big, of course, obviously, but the marathon days for me are even more crazy because 1994, you can really see the DNA of Halo when it comes to a lot of the designs that Bungie provided for Marathon. It is the early birth of Halo is actually in Marathon in a lot of ways. And I find that kind of fascinating because I was totally embedded and literally fascinated and addicted to Marathon. And it's funny to know that after quite a few years, you are going to be working on that franchise and trying to make it evolve in the best way. When I was 20-something, I remember that I was reading the Greg Bear novels, Aeon, and Greg Bear was actually started writing for Halo and did a trilogy that I actually illustrated starting around 2010. In what world can you imagine that you first read the books of your favorite sci-fi writers and 20 years afterwards, you start painting the covers for these same sci-fi writers. You meet them and you can befriend them and have crazy chats about what science fiction in a very, again, North American way, what it is representing. So that I cannot be more thankful for that type of experience and the history and my humble participation on that has been for quite a few years. I could not be more happy about that.
Well, Sparth, thinking about how for the last 6 years now, you've been the art director over the Halo franchise. Let's talk about leadership from there. You know, as an artist who is so celebrated as your personal art career, what kind of goal setting and how do you communicate goals to your team when you're kicking them off on things?
That's an interesting one. I think I'm always trying to, like I was saying earlier, making sure that the artist's personality, first of all, when you have an artist joining a franchise like this, like 343, there's always a reason. What I mean that they come because they have a luggage and something to provide. So in a way, this is the step one is you don't come to a team like this or to any other teams if you don't have anything to provide and that you really are not a personality fit. So it is a fact that you already work with the expectations that these friends and colleagues are going to be performing to their best, and they do, you know. The thing when it comes to management, I have two keywords. And this is something that I've been like applying at Microsoft, like in any other situations into either other companies I was working for when it comes to either Ubisoft and even before that. But it's true that as a director, you are expecting a lot out of people, and at the same time, you want them to be growing. The two keywords I have is talent and diplomacy. It's really these two words that are going to be the backbone of your participation to a big franchise or to any type of IP. Talent, this is an obvious one. So I'm not gonna just go. I'm not gonna just like go so on that. I'll go fast. Talent is about what you can contribute to. I always believe that you need to be good everywhere, but an expert somewhere. So whether you do 3D, 2D characters, environments, anatomy, weapons, vehicles, it's you gotta be multi-talented. That's a sure fact. But there's one field where you have to be better than everybody else. And if it's environment, fine. If it's characters, fine. But there's one field where you need to be spearheading an even better effort than the next guy. Not to be crushing, but to be there with an intent and an idea. So that's what I see talent for. You know, that's the talent phase. Diplomacy, another straightforward one, but diplomacy is all in the way you embed yourself and insert yourself into a team. And how much you're going to be smart at listening as much as you can provide feedback. This is vital when it comes to a lot of younger artists that are going to be in the future hired by a big group like Microsoft or Google or Amazon or any of the big tech companies that are wanting people to be embedding themselves into a lot of big teams. And this is vital. It has to do with diplomacy. It's listening as much as you can provide feedback and as much as you can talk yourself. But if you are too much of a stepping and hitting your shoes into a meeting and just not listening, it is just